In 1962, Amazing Fantasy number 15 hit the comic stand. Announced to be the final book, it would serve to help the creator, Stan Lee, to project a concept that many in his publishing company believed up and down to be the worst idea ever. A story of a teenage youth gifted by a miraculous, non-fatal radioactive spider bite would gain incredible power, but learn the consequences of flaunting it in an origin that stood the test of time. That with great power had to come with great responsibility. This is indeed the tale of a spectacular, sensational, and indeed amazing friendly neighborhood, Spider-Man. He has become a worldwide phenomenon, reaching many countries and uniting many faces from different cultures under the ingenious universal design's costume. As his creator once said, you can be anyone, black, white, Asian, whatever, and still imagine yourself in the costume. These tales help the company of Marvel Comics flourish, allowing more unique, daring concepts to be explored, and a pantheon of heroes to reach the hearts of many. You might even say that Spidey is the unofficial face of Marvel itself. From the pages of comics, he bounded a television audiences everywhere on September 9, 1967, in his first animated period, bringing not only another medium of entertainment to the iconic lovable webhead, but also debuting the very well-known theme song many have come to know when one thinks of Spider-Man. From there, he has reached to live television, to video games, to theme park attractions, stunt shows, and in 1980, plans were made to bring the sensation to the big screen after the notable success of DC Warner Brothers' Superman the Movie, a film that garnered wonderful reception by moviegoers and comic and superhero fans alike. However, it would seem like a dashed dream as development would be stop and go due to funding and licensing. But then, in 1999, the web was beginning to spin. Columbia Pictures acquired the rights to push forward. Finally, The Amazing Spider-Man was going to be the sensation of the new millennium. And in 2002, just 40 years after Peter Parker donned the suit and took flight across New York and to the hearts of many, a film franchise would begin that no one ever dreamed would be this ambitious. Welcome, one and all, to Web-trospective, 20 years of Spider-Man in film.
Hello there, everybody. Welcome to Web-trospective. As you can see, after that stunning intro done by my good usual co-host, Derek, aka darkneon.
Greetings, true believers! It's been a long time since I got to say that again.
It feels so good to say that again, yes. And as you can know from that, again, that jaunty intro that we've probably cut together, made, just thought up on the spot, we're here to talk about a film franchise that is probably still being felt to this day, changing the face of the modern cinematic landscape. Yeah, I mean, it's not as big as 2001 or being like revolutionary in that way, but for many fans, comic book animation, all those types of ones, that was probably where this film stands. Of course, we're talking about the Spider-Man franchise, a name that is known and beloved, and as the late creator Stan Lee would say, he's pretty much one of his most popular creations. That when people think of Stan Lee, those that don't think who's he would think of Spider-Man. It's like Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, and it's kind of odd that we're doing this. Okay, just kind of think this to yourself. It's been 60 years since this icon was created, and in the same year, it's 20 years since the character himself got to be a big movie star. And it's kind of crazy that the moon and planets aligned in that synonymous way, and why we are both here today to talk about it.
Yeah, we had so much fun doing our retrospective because I did that on a whim because it was 2020, the year that many of us were locked in with nothing to do, and I don't know why I felt like let's talk about them X-Men movies, and we ended up doing the entire series. Now I know some of you out there are probably thinking, but wait, isn't there like some unofficial movie that was out in the late 70s or something?
Yes, but let's be
Eh,
honest. If we really open it up with that movie that very few people know about, it would kind of be like, I don't know, beginning. Let me think of something.
Batman with those old serials.
Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, besides, I only knew that thing existed because I would go to Comic Cons and you would go to that place where they sell DVDs of things official and unofficial, and I would see an unofficial DVD of that Spider-Man the movie from that's made for TV.
and
Yeah. Anyway, so
let's be honest. It didn't really do anything like really groundbreaking or was really well received. It, it would be kind of foolish for us to make this huge ambitious project and start with like a big flop. Like it would be like us saying, "Oh, hey, let's do a Superman retrospective, and let's start on part 4 for no absolute reason."
yeah. So yes, we're here to be talking about Spider-Man, of course. And but before we actually talk about this film proper, there actually was a lot that went into this guy coming to the big screen. Some of it over the dumbest of reasons. Again, there's thousands upon thousands of researched and deep introspective videos about the many failed attempts to bring Spider-Man to screen. Hell, one of them was going to be handled by the king of the world at the time, James frickin' Cameron, before he got obsessed with making Avatar movies.
Well, movie. I'm still like on the fence. Even if a trailer did come out, I'd still be like, yeah, sure, I'll believe when I see it.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, but yeah. So let's start at the beginning. Let's go back. Okay. Let's turn the clocks back a few years. Uh,
A
let's see.
few
So
many years, like nearly almost 40 years.
yes. So of course, and like he mentioned, in the 1980s, they did try to bring Spider-Man to the big screen a while back. I think it was under the Globus uh, Canon Film
It
Productions, I
it
believe.
was indeed by going under. Well, the first to have the option was producer Roger Corman, and to film it with Orion Pictures, and then it would
But,
move, and then the film rights went to Golan and Goldbliss, and then they would get liquidated down and move it to Metro Goldwyn Mayer, and then there'd be for
I
some reason
think
a
Fox had it.
lawsuit. Yeah, Fox had it, and then Metro Goldwyn Mayer gets it, and then due to some like lawsuit over an unofficial James Bond franchise, the rights to Casino Royale would be like in a trade to be given to Metro Goldwyn Mayer, while Sony gets to have the rights to Spider-Man. And the rest is, of course, history.
Infamously, one of the guys who was making the Spider-Man movie didn't even know what Spider-Man was and thought it actually meant like a man turning into a human spider.
Which, to be fair, is not too far off from the comics. But I don't. What is the storyline of that going on at the time? I feel like that was something that was done in the 90s. Okay,
Yeah, it
maybe
was.
80s. Yeah, but yeah, that's quite a big leap. I mean, that's not like bash the guy. I mean, for goodness sakes, the director of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan never saw Star Trek, and yet he made one of, if not the best Star Trek film known
But
to fandom and community.
funny thing though, he was going to go with more like a Wolfman thing, but with a guy who's like a big hairy spider, and it was like a horror picture. Funnily enough, a movie like that eventually did get made. Not no relation at all, but I just find it funny because there was a made for a sci-fi TV movie called Earth versus the Spider, a remake of a classic, 60s, sci-fi horror film with the where there was like a giant spider superimposed over buildings and stuff. They like kind of like Tarantula. They made one of that where a guy inspired by Hero Comics, tries to is at a research lab and there's like a spider thing and he puts spider DNA in his system and begins Cronenberg-esque, turning into like this man spider thing. Coincidentally, Bruce Campbell was in that, I think.
But of course, it was saved, thankfully, by the fact that Stanley hated the horror route the studio was taking with the character. It's ironic considering that one of his other characters, the Hulk, was very horror related. But let's be real. Like, there's no way you could handle a horror theme for Spider-Man for your first outing, as like this is like literally the face of your company's icon being put to the world en masse. It would be like debuting Superman out and saying that, oh, this guy has like a Jekyll and Hyde personality.
And he turns
Like,
into like a big bald fellow with super mind powers that break stuff, and he proclaims about the reign of the Superman. I think some of you just seen what I did there.
but yeah, so a different script would be written, and this one would have actually worked. It had some potential. This Parker would get spider abilities from a cyclotron experiment, if I'm reading this. And funny enough, the first antagonist was going to be Dr. Octopus. And he was actually written to be Peter's mentor turned enemy, which is something you would see in other properties done well. So it's not quite
Well, even I think
out there.
yeah, I mean, the point is they were going in interesting directions, but I think Spider-Man's biggest enemy wasn't the Sinister Six, nor was it any cosmic threat. His biggest enemy was lawyers and litigiousness and all that stuff. That tends to be what got in the way of most of these Spider properties. In fact, it's so funny to think of a time when Marvel had trouble even getting one of their movies off the ground, when nowadays we're living in the culture where Marvel is on every lunchbox and shirt and everyone knows their names of every character, whereas back then you'd be lucky to even get a Fantastic Four or X-Men off the ground. And there were many attempts in that poor company's history.
And the one script that I was describing, it was so close to getting off the ground, but then Golden Globus' failures included Superman for the Quest for Peace and Masters of the Universe, which
Oof.
slashed the budget for Spider-Man, which was going to be sitting at a 15 to 20 million at the time of at least 1985. So a 15 to 20 million in 1985 is nothing to sneeze at. Let's not curious.
I think Terminator 1 was made for a little around that amount, and that turned out pretty well.
But yeah, after those films were slashed, that film's budget cut down to 7 million.
No, I was wrong. The budget for Terminator was 6.4 million. Damn, James Cameron. You made a miracle out of that one.
Probably is what would have led to people suggesting, hey, how about we get this James Cameron guy to do Spider-Man? It's like he was able to make a film with so little, surely he could be able to pull it off. And, well, that one, the James Cameron film treatment is probably the most famous account anyone will ever talk about this development hell cycle of Spider-Man, where it would introduce the concept of Spidey having organic web shooters, which Sam Raimi would eventually bring on board, and would also include some really weird out there ideas, reimagine villains of
And
Electro
apparently,
and Sandman.
and allegedly there was going to be a little more of an edge to this, so there would have been a little more swearing and stuff like that, which is funny because I think most people's perspective of Spider-Man colored by the animated shows at that time and everything, like the Electric Company would be surprised that that kind of stuff would be going on, I guess.
Yeah, funny. And also, at one point, they were thinking to have Leonardo DiCaprio be the main character.
Ooh, that would have been amazing.
But of course, the MGM would get acquired by 21st Century, and then they sued Viacom, Marvel, and they accused fraud in the original deal, and blah blah blah, bankruptcy. It's all just business jargon. Essentially, things are just not looking up for Marvel at that time.
But yeah, so who would come in? But an unlikely sort, because like Columbia, like it says in the end, ended up securing the rights. Because if I remember, yeah, James Bond eventually did went to Columbia, ironically. with the Casino Royale series. But before that, yeah, MGM and United Artists acquired the rights, and I think they gave their shares of Spider-Man as a trade-off. And not only did they give the rights to the movie, I think they gave the actual character rights. So Sony, in perpetuity, does own the rights to the character of Spider-Man, I believe.
Well, the film rights
Like,
at least. The television and comics have all gone back to Marvel, which is why you
yeah,
are able to see
but
that many cartoons being put out by Marvel itself these days. But Sony is like
yeah, but you're right.
proudly holding the rights to Spider-Man like it's their trophy.
Well, it's one of their biggest successes right there. And it's not that hard to see why if you look at the history, which we're going to be covering a lot of. But yeah, yeah, I mean that's why you tend to see like Sony and there was a period where Sony and Spider-Man were inseparable. That even the PlayStation 3 font looked like Spider-Man's font on the logo and all that stuff. But yes,
But
so Columbia, mhm,
in April 1999, the Sony and Columbia Pictures managed to get the rights to do Spider-Man. At one point, were looking through Cameron's material, but they would at least go through like a lot of scriptment treatments.
what was the reason why Cameron's thing didn't end up going in the very very end?
Uh, it's, I know we're plagiarized. We sound like we're plagiarized for Wikipedia, and the truth is, we kind of are. We're just trying to like really detail how
Context.
hard it was to get this project off the ground. Like we all love the 2002 movie, but you would not believe how much of a pain and hassle it was to get this dream actually made into reality.
Actually, the same goes for any Marvel property made in the early 2000s. How hard it was to get Hulk off the ground, how hard it was to get X-Men. Like, just again, it's funny to think there was a period where Marvel were the underdogs here, like can't even get a scrap. People wouldn't pay them no mind, and nowadays they're one of the biggest names in the movie industry. So it's again, it shows you that tenacity and good decisions can always lead to prosperous results.
In fact, I'm just gonna go through a list of potential directors that Sony were looking to make this film happen. So we got Roland Emmerich. Ugh. Yep, no thanks. Tony Scott, Chris Columbus.
Nice.
I can kind of see that. Barry Sonnenfeld. Like, that would be a little bit
Hmm.
humor related. Michael Bay. Nah.
Yeah, he was starting out at that point. This is
Ang
before he
Lee.
got the
Oh,
reputation.
oh goodness. If we had an Ang Lee Spider-Man movie, we would see all comic panels and such.
Well, you probably get a
John,
lot of mopey Spider-Man.
Jan de Bont.
Oh yeah, that was Twister and Speed and the Godzilla movie that never happened, Godzilla '94.
Ed Night Shyamalan.
He was on the rise at that point. He had just done Sixth Sense, so he was probably one
Uh,
of the most popular names at the time.
the more intriguing name on the list is David Fincher, but David said he
Oh,
didn't want to depict the origin story. He actually pitched to do a film based on the night Gwen Stacy died storyline. But
ooh,
Sony were like,
shit.
yeah, let's not do that. And
But that
Columbus
would have
would.
been a
No, go on.
go, you first.
I was gonna move on to like another point, but you like
If David Lynch did the night Gwen Stacy died, that would be one of the most crushing things any comic fans ever received. But it would be done artfully. Like, I mean, come on. Even though he didn't have his full heart into Dune, he still made that one relatively interesting. And then his movies where he does put it in, like Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks and all that stuff, the guy is a cinematic genius. So to see him helm uh, a Spider-Man movie would have been nutso.
yeah. Christopher Columbus did come close, but he would later pass on to direct Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
I guess that worked
Uh,
out well for everybody.
yeah, and finally, Amy Pascal's choice for director would be our lovable Sam Raimi, and he agreed. Thankfully, he's attached to direct in January of 2000, right at the cusp
So,
of the new millennium coming in.
what's funny is, so here's the thing: when you hear Sam Raimi, I think anybody who knew his reputation at the point would know that this was the guy, the Evil Dead guy. He made, him and his friends made a backwoods movie. They blew that up into a little thing and remade it basically to make the first Evil Dead movie, I believe. And they, things, the guy had quite an interesting filmography. I mean, and you would go, what would a horror guy have to do with heroes? I mean, he did come close with that '90s film Darkman, which featured Liam Neeson as a disfigured scientist getting revenge on some crooked mobsters and all that stuff. But it turns out that Sam Raimi himself is a diehard Spider-Man fan. I mean, as we all know, this anyone who knows his backstory knows that the guy grew up with a painting of Spider-Man that his parents commissioned to paint over his bed and all that stuff, and he painted it, and he kept that thing. So him and Spidey go way back, basically.
And really, who better to have someone directing your first Spider-Man movie ever that is finally getting legs to actually get off and become reality than someone who actually understands and loves the character. Again, let's not forget that one time one of the directors in the past didn't know who Spider-Man was and thought he was like a horror concept.
So yeah, it would help because I mean nowadays it's a no-brainer of the person knows the character or did some research, but no, this guy was steeped in Spider-Man lore. Like he read the Dicto runs and the Romita runs and all that stuff. So he's very attached to the character. And like I said, again, you wouldn't think a horror director would be fit, but he also balanced comedy and action in his other movies. I mean, Army of Darkness is one of his funniest movies, I think.
So yeah, with Sam Raimi attached, we're hoping to do a summer 2001 release, which probably
Oof.
did not happen due to real world events. But thankfully, they were able to march on and delay the film to a 2002 release in May, which was actually unintentionally a smart move since, as I stated in the prologue, it would debut on the 40th anniversary of the Spider-Man character himself. And what a way to celebrate Spidey's big 40, his big screen debut.
Coincidentally, Superman got his movie on his 40th year, if you remember.
The original Superman movie?
Yes.
Yes.
1978 was 40 years after 38. So again, that's another funny parallel. In fact, those are the two that always seem to get like a funny parallels. Would be Superman and Spider-Man. Hell, even the two even fought briefly in an official comic before teaming up.
To actually get my hands on that trade.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, it's great. But yeah, so Sam Raimi. Let's talk a little more about him and his style because he has quite the unique sensibilities that you can see evidenced in his other movies before he even did Spider-Man. So one thing he got obviously is that he can be very visceral, very frantic and kinetic. I mean, one need look only at his Evil Dead movies when he would have the point of view of the evil, and it would just be like going unstoppably through the warped bushes and trees and into the cabin. Like he had a unique vision thing. He also was very good at, let's say, bodily, slapstick, so to speak. And like he asked Bruce Campbell what it's like working on the set with Sam Raimi.
And the dude had also a background for a magician's like background. So him coming up with all of the ingenious like stunt work and visual effects tricks to help with the cast and crew would really help bring this character to life. And he also does implement some of his camera work. In one of the scenes, if Peter trying to get used to his new like weird sensations that he's feeling at school, whenever they're around the crowd, you notice the camera moves a little bit. It feels like it's organic. It feels like you're actually there witnessing Parker like surviving a bully fight in school with his new spider powers.
Oh yeah, and yeah, he does a lot of like quick cut. I mean, the funny thing is he carried over a lot of his crew that he had developed friendship with and understanding, partnerships with from his works on Evil Dead and all those Darkman, all those movies that he had worked in the past. He had basically formed a crew where they know each other's rhythm, they know each other's things. So he had like the same production designer, Neil Spacek. He had, the editor. He had all these guys that he had worked with before that they knew him, they knew each other, so it was almost like a tight knit movie family trying to make this Spider-Man thing go together, rather than, oh, okay, like for example, Aliens had James Cameron come from a low background of Corman films, and here he's working with a few people he carried over, and he would always clash with like the people the studio assigned him with that didn't know his rhythm or how he ran, and they'd be back and forth. But at least Raimi, even though he's working in the big studio infrastructure, is still being very keeping close to people he can trust and understand. And even if he didn't work with them before, he understands they have a pedigree. Like John Dykstra of Star Wars fame, the visual effects there. He helped with some of the visual effects in some of the later movies. So yeah, it's like he he knew how to. He had the indie sensibilities, but also had the ability to work within a big crew and set to make this thing work. But it doesn't become detached or become like a by committee thing. It still feels like a personal movie. It is most in doubt a Sam Raimi movie. That's what you can say about most of his films. The films where he has the most muzzle on feel the most stilted, but the ones where they let Raimi be Raimi definitely feel like a personal film. Even if the film is a bit of a mess, sometimes you still say that that's a Sam Raimi movie. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and also I feel when watching this movie, there's also like this sensation of okay, so for a while there was like this weird way of how comic book movies should be made. Like with when Superman was made, it felt like kind of like almost three movies essentially, where you had the setting of Krypton, it's like a sci-fi epic, and like the setting of Smallville, Kansas, which felt like an up and coming like a
Coming of age
underdog
story.
coming of age story, and then you get this Metropolis storyline where it feels like it's like a typical like street savvy, like everyone's like on the get go, everyone's like on move, and it felt at the time that was also kind of like a very cheesy but wholesome comic book experience. And then later on, we also get in the like early 90s this dark gothic interpretation with stuff like the Batman and Spawn, but and then it come to 2000 with the X-Men movie, which kind of elevated the whole comic book aesthetic to be like this serious realistic thing. And and Sam decided, okay, first and foremost, this is a comic book movie and it should feel like watching a comic book coming to life. And here you get like these exaggerated scenes, like the wrestling scene. It really feels like something out of a comic book. Like having Bruce Campbell be the the ringmaster, the Randy Savage playing the the champion
Bowen Saw.
wrestler, and like montages that would happen in the movie, like Spider-Man conceptualizing his suit idea, or learning about his like new powers, or the city civilians reacting to this appearance of the new Spider-Man. And the action also is very dynamic. It's very like very fluid. It's almost like comic panels without feeling like comic panels,
But
which is
yeah,
something that Ang Lee kind of missed the mark on with his Hulk movie.
it was a unique idea, but it could have been done better. But you're right. Sam Raimi also thought, like, as mentioned in another documentary talking about hero films, they were all going through hard, rough growing pains in the 80s and 90s until, like I said, a couple of successful films pretty much came out with the basic approach of don't mess with the basics. If you have a character, you strip him down to the core of what makes that character special, and then adapt that to film. You don't try to reinvent the wheel every time you have to put a character to the movie screen. You got to learn why people love this character, what sticks out, and attach that, and that'll give the audience something to go on to. Because if you look at some of those films that were made during the rush and like this is the 80s and 90s, some of them were a little like Spawn. Bless your heart, Todd, for trying to put it in. But I think the way Spawn was handled was kind of mixed bag.
And trying to
But
reinvent Steel as like this grounded superhero instead of being like an offshoot of Superman, which he made it his own thing in the comics, but in the movie it definitely feels like it's like making a known comic book character into one that's just so like okay, this is like a pitch concept. It's like Here's a guy who has this military backing, and he becomes the defender of justice with his like super steel technology. But it doesn't really feel like you're watching a comic book adaptation. It feels like you're watching like a pitch. You're watching a poster pitch essentially.
It's also like like the Mario movie. The Mario movie is a unique idea and all that stuff, but you're watching this going, this barely feels like the source material. I don't remember the SMM Shy Guys or the fungus Mushroom Kingdom being in like a polluted city or you know
The actual
like I said that
final
one.
lizard of Yoshi. Which,
Yeah,
bless
like
their, which,
there,
a side note, bless their heart for making that working animatronic real. But you do realize that Yoshi is known for being a rideable dinosaur, right?
but yeah, like I said though, he looked more Jurassic Park than Yoshi. But yeah, so point is like those are things where they take a few names and few things and sprinkle them in there, but it's to no avail. You're not getting the heart of what makes that thing work. I mean, if you look at today, we just had a Sonic movie come out, and that one still understand the core basics of what made that character work. And we have movies like Spider-Man to thank for that approach because, like I said, Sam Raimi knew this is but down on his luck kid, the audience feels like Spider-Man because Spider-Man is the audience. Like he's the guy who can't get a can't get a date, can't get a job, can't he has to figure out these problems. Like because that was always Stanley's thing. Well, what if I made a hero that the reader could relate to? Like though, like I gave him acne because the readers would have acne. Like he couldn't cash his checks because it would be he was trying to make him the most relatable guy. I mean, that's why he even put him in a place like New York when other guys had Gotham and Metropolis. Though he thought, no, I wanted the reader to feel like, oh, hey, Spider-Man could be swinging outside Queens and all that stuff like that. Sam Raimi understood that assignment and applied that to this movie, and that's why it probably still has such sticking power even after 20 years, I would say.
Yes, and despite some visual, like really early visual like oddities, this movie is really like rewatchable, like to ad nauseum. I would consider this to be like my most watched Spider-Man movie of the Raimi trilogy. Probably even mostly for uh, any of the Spider-Man movies. I think the closest to come up is Into the Spider-Verse, but that's only been recent, and I've had like almost at least 20 years with this picture growing up since I was like, oh, how old I was? 7 years old? No, I was actually 9 years old.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like you're right. It doesn't get because there's movies where we watch as kids, and you kind of wince going, yeah, that did not hold up. And hell, even as much as a classic as 70s Superman is, there are some things that are like super dated that you can't help but say, yeah, that was a product of its time. I think
But
even
it,
more so with Superman
yeah, but
2 and
it's
all that
still,
stuff. All the sequels, definitely.
yeah. I hear 3 is getting like some fan love, but no one's gonna be like defending Part 4. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
So
But so you're right. But yeah, but so Spider-Man, yeah, so I think Sam Raimi was the right guy for the job. And if you listen to his commentary, this guy is so soft spoken and so humble. It's so damn funny because you'd see a movie as twisted as Evil Dead, but like, trees raping people and tongues, coming out of demons and all that stuff. And you find out he's probably one of the most laid back, shy guys you've ever met. Like a guy had a Catholic upbringing for crying out loud. Hell, I had a horror book where they had interviews with all of the horror directors at different times, and one of them was about Raimi, and he brought up how even to this day, because he says even though he has violence in his films, he's not about like real life violence like crazy. He even admits that at that time, he said to this day, whenever he finds a spider in his house, he'll always take the trouble of like getting a cup and envelope, getting the spider and then moving it out to some place in the garden or whatever. He would not kill the spider. He did make a joke saying, "Oh, if that spider's inside my cell, all bets are off."
so
He also has a funny
I,
sense of humor. Like his brothers, one of his brothers is actually in this movie. Him and his brother, they kind of got like a love of the Three Stooges. So they would like do a lot of like slapstick, like oh, I mean, darkness. You got the skeletons coming out of the graves doing the little famous two-finger eye poke that the Stooges made popular.
right, and they would, and the Raimis would implement some of that slapstick humor into this movie, but it would actually help elevate to show Spider-Man's prowess. Like to see like all these everyday other people dealing with this guy that is able to shoot webs out of his wrists and able to climb walls and dealing with like the absolute insane thing that they've ever dealt with, like seeing how Bonesaw gets tossed around. This bulky Randy Savage character is tossed around by this skinny, lanky guy in this like uh, tracksuit costume, which is we'll talk about the costume design later. But seeing that is just hilarious, especially in the cage match setting, or seeing like this bully of a jock just like outright missing this nerd that we know on record that he's probably beaten or kicked around dozens of times, but is like missing like every few seconds, or
Oh,
even
that's the
to
other.
if show like how deranged a supervillain like Green Goblin would like really take advantage and show his malicious side by tossing like innocent civilians or Spider-Man around like a rag doll, which definitely helps show the a bit of the humor on him and also the seriousness when the impacts hit.
Well, hell, I mean, even the most recent interpretation of the Goblin, which is this character, they tore apart an entire A and B like in a way where I'm going, shit, man. We'll talk about that when we get to that movie, but I'm just saying though, you're right. But that all comes from Sam's sensibilities. So anyway, I think we gushed enough about how this director was the right guy. Let's actually talk about the movie itself. Let's talk about the guy that asked us if we really want to know who he is, whose story is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, so we're gonna be like doing things a little bit different than our usual rambles. We're actually going to discuss each characters, and we're also going to make sure that we follow these same characters through the trilogy to show their development. So uh, let's obviously start off with Peter Parker, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, who would be played by Tobey Maguire. But before we do that, let's just actually put out how hilarious I'm looking at the what the studios had thoughts of for the lead role instead of Toby, and they got names like Leonardo DiCaprio was one, Freddie Prinze Jr., Chris O'Donnell. Seriously, Jude
Robin.
Law, Chris Klein, Wes Bentley, Heath Ledger would have been Spider-Man at one point. Jeez, trying to imagine that
Curious.
timeline. There's,
Oh,
but it's yeah, that's
go
uh,
on.
no. Actually, funny enough, the Joe Manganiello auditioned for the role, but he would actually end up being Parker's bully, Flash Thompson, and James Franco would actually be
That's
in that same uh, test screening, and he would be given the role of Harry Osborn. So yeah, it's kind of funny how at
it's
least
funny
like
how often that happens.
yeah, I think that happened. One of the time I could think of is oh, what was it? I think Harrison
Batman
Ford
Begins.
brought Kurt Russell for or no, it was I don't know. We're getting our stories mixed up, but it's Jonesy's right.
But I know I'm
This
talking
has
about
happened
Batman.
many times before.
And Batman Begins, Killian Murphy was brought in to audition for Batman, and even though they were strong at that point, I think Christian Bale was already in the bag for it. I think Nolan was so captivated by the way Killian performed that he gave him the role of Crane. So it's funny how that happens where they go, if you're not going to be the hero, you still get to join the story as someone who beats him up.
So
So
yeah,
anyway,
Tobey
yeah,
Maguire would
the
become
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, and I guess they um I've had quite a weird love hate relationship with Tobey Maguire growing up. It's as a kid, obviously I loved him because he was my Spider-Man. But then when the Amazing movies came out and they hired a new actor with Andrew Garfield, I was like on one of those types of people who saying, okay, well, to a point, this guy managed to get Spider-Man right in a way that Toby couldn't. Like I'm sure you've all seen the memes, how Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is always like the mopey, crying Spider-Man. Like every film he's in, he's always got to have a crying scene, or the fact that he doesn't quip or joke as much as his comic iteration. But well, nowadays I have grown to really respect the guy because this is the guy that literally had to be the face of the franchise and the character at one point, and it's really not an easy task considering that he would probably be expected to do some pretty wild stunt work, and he will give you like stories about how the costume was not um, really flexible or like breathable, and one scene notable, he almost drowned in for being upside down in like a rainy environment.
Mhm.
But
But
I
yeah,
will, but I will admit that the Toby Spider-Man gives kind of like this down to earth guy. Like he is portraying the nerdy aspect of Spider-Man. This Peter Parker that's just kind of like almost kind of like a nobody. Like this, he would literally be the kid that the bus driver would like without question just kind of ignore and let him like stand behind just for like a
like,
chuckle. And
they even make fun of that in the movie itself when when he's talking about the girl he loves and everything, and he says, "I wish I would say that that was me." When he sees the big jock flash, and even sees the fat guy going, "Hell, I'd even be that guy." But no, I'm the guy who's chasing the bus. So, like, because that's
it,
the thing about Parker
and
in the
the way that
comics.
that scene was portrayed, it's kind of like again reiterating that this is feeling like a comic book movie because obviously nowadays you would never imagine like a school bus doing that to like a kid for like malicious reasons. Like they would get their ass fired if like someone reported that. But this
Yeah,
is like trying to help invoke that this Parker Peter Parker is down on his luck. He's kind of like struggling and just trying to like he's like the guy that sees the girl next door as his dream girl and is trying to hope that he could actually have a future with her. And then, of course, he unequivocally gets to be the guinea pig unofficially to this genetic spider. Which, okay, that's a quick side. When I was going to see this film as a kid, I literally dreaded seeing the spider on the screen. Like, it, as soon as like I saw any hints of the spider, I would kind of wince and close my eyes because I just like I didn't want to see that close of the spider. But looking at it now, it's kind of got this weird, cute charm of being like this literal blue and red spider. It's if like, oh yeah, the color scheme is genetic now. That's why Spidey gets to have that costume design. But
funny funny enough that spider it was a combination of it was mostly practical. Like that's a real life spider. They actually made a like a little quote unquote glass dress for a a western redback widow,
oh,
and
I would not
they
doubt Sam making a practical spider because like seeing it like move like around Peter's hand or crawling away on the floor. Yeah, I can definitely tell that that's not like a CG effect. That's legit real. I have this
I
weird like valley, like uncanny valley if I see like insects acting with their legs in a way that's unnatural in like CGI, which is probably why I can't play old Resident Evil games because the way they move is like, ugh, I know this thing's like a huge tarantula, but the way it moves is like, ugh, that's not how the bone structure moves. What are you doing? Ugh, it's disgusting.
yeah it's rather it's rather uncanny, but he's right. Yeah, the spider is really well realized in this bit, and I like how he was too love struck to notice the thing even crawling on his hand when before it does the immortal bite.
But coming back to the character of Peter Parker, his portrayal of learning that he has these incredible gifts, this um, it's kind of humorous to watch his like awakening after his like uh, really painful sleep and seeing like imagery of like showing like, oh yeah, this is what the Spidey is doing. It was literally rewriting his genetic code to its baseline. And he's waking up and he's like, oh, I can see without glasses. Oh my god, I have a chiseled ad. Oh my god, I'm grown. If you get my meaning there. But
But
yeah,
yeah,
he's
it's
coming to terms with the fact that he's kind of got this like weird, miraculous, but also cursed second chance because he has like these amazing gifts. Like he's able to help save Mary Jane from a slip, which, and no joke, that was a practical trick. This is not CGI. That one took like over 100 takes to get right, and but
yeah,
also having to
the great
deal with the
reflexes moment.
but also having to deal with the fact that he's learning that webs are coming out of him all of a sudden, or that he has this strange spider sense that allows him to sense the sensation around him until he spots the source of danger. Which, no kidding, that's probably like the like most trippiest sensation of the spider sense I've seen to date. Up until we got an interesting take on that with No Way Home.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're right. It's very funny. He does get the nerdy aspect right. So when he like spouts off big, like for lack of a better term, scientific nerd stuff, you buy it that he would understand it. Like when he's explaining how a friggin' electron microscope on Eastern Seaboard is and how spiders do this and that, it's very funny. You'd be like, yeah, he would know something about that. And
Exactly. Like okay, so other movies have like this weird tendency. Oh my god, even back in like early '90s, they have this weird like mentality of how a nerd should look or act. Like sometimes they'll go to one extreme where they're like a freaking Steve Urkel, or in another extreme where they're like a charming like a computer specialist like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. Where it's like, okay, but would he really look like that? And then Tobey Maguire is
I know.
like able to actually do this like really believable middle ground, and that's probably what Sam saw when he casted him as this.
And they updated it. They updated the nerd because, like I said, nerds in the '60s would be like doing like chemistry kits and stuff like that. And this is like a guy from the well, you really don't get a time period. Thankfully, it just it's almost timeless when it happens.
Exactly. That's why
But you got to
it's
point. The
meant
more
to show
modern
the
nerd is.
is that's kind of why I pointed out that this movie is kind of like it has this like this comic book sensation. Like there's like small chain like diners. We have like these ludicrous like wrestling like arenas. We have um, this large lavish tycoon company of Oscorp with like a building I'm sure is not like structurally sound if it was like that realistic, but it's obviously not. And even making
But
like
what's funny is that the Oscorp building doesn't look like an ominous "we're the bad guy" structure like later projects would eventually do. Like every time you see an Oscorp tower in like other medium, you go like, well, of course that'd be a place where bad guys do stuff and all that thing.
yeah,
It's a little innocuous here.
but not only that, but also making iconic New York landmarks be like almost kind of like a
Wow.
surreal like comic book fantasy, if you will. And
Like
yeah, it really definitely helps to make these trilogies kind of timeless, even though they do dip a little bit to what was like real world 2000s at the time.
but yeah. So yeah, like I said, what's funny is that one thing he does get is of course the nerdy hopeless romantic side. Like whenever you see him have talks with MJ, they're a little they're love his life. They're a little awkward, and that's the point. Is that this is a guy who's trying to find his way into love, but it's not wooden or stilted. And I know people like to say for them sometimes they feel the relationship is like the worst thing about these movies, but you do buy it because it's just like in when they were making Superman. I keep making a lot of comparisons. The screenwriter knew that the heart of the movie would be uh, Lois Lane getting together with Superman. And, like if you buy the relationship, they're back and forth. If you buy that, then the rest of the movie's problems would solve itself. Yeah, you can have the big set pieces, the big action, but if you don't have your heart set out on something, and all those spectacles for naught. So you're really going to buy that this guy is really vying for the girl of his dreams. And when he has his talks, you can tell he's fumbling for words because what would he say? I mean, one of my favorite scenes is when he admits that, well, I kind of take pictures of Spider-Man. Did he talk about me? And he goes into this from the heart speech where you buy it like he's uh that's what he wants to really tell her after he's getting confidence and all that stuff from saving her and everything. And then it's a little geeky, so it's funny with the whole like, did he really say all that? Uh, well, more or less.
Yeah,
and
and also that awkwardness also goes into the way he says like his Spider-Man lines, essentially, like lines that I'm sure a lot of people would like laugh off as saying like corny or stuff like "It's you, Zagabi, out of your mind." But that's literally what a nerd kid would think to say as being when they're being like a superhero like that. Like you gotta
and
have
he does quips.
you gotta have this machismo act. Like I think honest, in some weird way he's kind of doing like what he thinks Flash Thompson would be if he was actually like not a big douche or like a jerk.
But it's like for example, like when Jameson, the editor's like getting mad at Spider-Man for fighting in the office, he webs him saying, "Hey, let mom and dad talk for a bit, kids," stuff like that. But yeah, also, he does do a lot of stuff in the suit, so that really is him in the suit. So you buy. I mean, yeah, there are some stuntmen who do stuff like the big swings and some of the big combat scenes, but I think for the most part it is Toby in the Spider-Man suit, and you buy it, but you buy his Peter Parker, and you would buy this Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So it's not like, oh, one actor's playing Spider-Man, and it's like Super Sentai where, oh, well, it's a different person in the suit, so in the body language is all different. No, you still feel that it's the same character, and and another thing he gets well with Spider-Man is, well, of course, one of the biggest aspects of the character not only is his tremendous power, but also his guilt when things go really wrong, and he doesn't layer it on thick where you go like, oh, get over it, because there are some later Spider-Man stories in the comics where you're going like, gosh, you're positively grim. Whereas,
My life is nothing but a series of tragic events.
like the hell, Shinji Ikari of Evangelion will tell him, dude, you're pathetic at times. Uh, for those of you who know Evangelion, that's saying something. So thankfully, Sam knew that to give the angst its proper due. Like there's a great moment, because after where he goes to graduating, and it's something they didn't expect. Like it was always a given, but the fact that his uncle's not there, there's a point where he has a moment to himself, but not much is said. He just kind of has the moist eyes, and then when his auntie talks to him, he finally does let it all out. Like, yeah, I really miss him, and he really does sell those moments, and I mean, he does a lot of acting with his eyes that are pretty good too. Like there's a bit where a blow up happens at Thanksgiving dinner, thanks to him being late and all that stuff, and things dovetail from there. And he has a definitely a look of guilt, like I guess I had something to do with ruining this. He didn't know that Osborn was the Goblin, but
Or
you can
also
tell there's
the
an underlying sense.
or also the look of shock and horror as his face is. You realize, oh my god, the goblin knows who I am and actually found a way to hurt me.
So yeah, it's again that's really good acting from Toby, and like I'm saying, he is goofy, but he's also somber and he can be intimidating. I mean, uh, even before like Spider-Man, there's a couple of movies where you see him and you go like, oh, the guy can get that intensity needed. I mean, hell, there's movies where he's now where he has freakouts, and I go, damn, this guy is a good actor. Like he did a movie about a chess player, a real life chess player champion. There's a part where he has this thing where he's mad. Like that was today. He sells the emotion when he's like having meltdowns and outbursts. But yeah, hell, I mean, Bully Maguire from Spider-Man 3 has kind of become a bit of a meme. But we'll talk about that more. I think. But the thing is that yeah, he was right for it. And other people say nowadays that maybe he might have been a little too corny or too much this way, but for 2001, he needed to be exactly what he needed to be to sell us on the Peter Parker part.
Yeah. So to wrap up on uh, Peter Parker Spider-Man, the portrayal given by Toby is very humble, very down to earth, and very earnest. And you definitely get sold on that, and it's honestly what helped elevate this movie to get a trilogy or to get a film franchise off its like ass after years of development hell, essentially. And for that, we definitely have huge props to give to Toby. And we'll continue to give him props when we discuss his portrayals in 2 and 3 and in another property that comes down along the way. But let's move on to the opposite of every superhero movie, the other main star, and what many believe is another aspect of any superhero movie, and without them, they would either stand up or fail. And that would be our arch nemesis, with Willem Dafoe portraying Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin.
Okay. What's funny is I think at one point Willem Dafoe was on a short list of actors to play the Joker when they were trying to make Batman back in the day. And the thing is that well, Green Goblin is essentially the Joker of the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery. He's not the first villain. He's not like his or strongest, but he is the one that made the most impression in the comics. Like hell, the guy even terrorized people, uh, not even being in a movie, but his image was in that 80s Stephen King movie, Maximum Overdrive, where one of the villain trucks to show you how evil it is has a Green Goblin hood ornament for a face.
So before we get to Willem Dafoe and his portrayal of this like very iconic and loved Spider-Man villain, uh, again let's list what could have been. Who would have been like in the what many dubbed as the Green Power Ranger suit? So you got names like Jason Isaacs, John Malkovich,
Ooh,
Nicolas Cage,
nice. Oh,
and I'm gonna laugh at my ass off. Jim Carrey. Gee, yet another movie in which Jim Carrey like attains power through the color of green. Almost like this guy just lives and thrives off the damn pigment.
Loki's mask, uh, the Grinch being green, Riddler green. Hell, even okay, that might be spoilery, but even Sonic at one point he's donning green.
But they most of those were they mostly turned on the roll. So it would be go to Willem Dafoe, and uh, notably Dafoe insisted to wear the uncomfortable, as he thought the stuntman wouldn't convey his character's body language. But obviously, a 580-piece suit that takes half an hour to put on would have probably like dampened a little bit and made the studio say, "Yeah, let's like mostly CGI him on the glider."
But you gotta admit though, he does have a unique body. He does throw himself into the role, and what's funny is that he doesn't make Norman Osborn some one-note corporate megalomaniac. He actually, you kind of feel for the guy. It's weird to say because when you already meet him, he's already endearing himself to Parker. You know, because he's Parker's son, friends with his son Harry, and but then when he sees that Parker has such potential and brilliance, he's basically the son that he never had. He just warms himself up, and he is not like a completely evil dude. He's just the guy who's trying to do something right for his company because if without it, that goes sinking in. So he thought, well, I'll take the plunge myself. And Defoe, as I mentioned, it helps that Defoe himself is likable, but he could also turn the switch from likable to intimidating. Like one good example of that is when he's at the Thanksgiving thing and they're looking for Spider-Man and there's no sign of him. And then when the blood drip falls into the ground, his eyes, everything just kind of changes. And he's like a different person all of a sudden, even though not much has changed when in that scene. Then in the next scene, he'll be back to being happy chummy with everybody.
Yeah. So the Green Goblin being known as being like this psychotic villain that was known infamously for killing off Gwen Stacy in the comics. It's definitely a huge feat. It is funny to mention that Green Goblin at one point would have been a side antagonist to Doctor Octopus in like an earlier treatment. Yes, they were gonna go that route with having two villains at the same time. Thankfully, this doesn't happen in a movie franchise, right? Uh,
Right?
Anyways, let's describe that. So yes, obviously the costume it wasn't really well received when it was debuted in like set shots and all that. And it was, as stated before, it was compared to a Power Ranger like suit, which is quite a huge cry from like this uh, weird, outlandish, theatrical, like purple and green, like Halloween mask. But at one point, it's Josie loves to tell this, but there was at one point where they tried to make this working, living, breathing mask, but I think due to like either budget reasons or the fact that the damn thing looked scary as hell, that they would change to this um, admittedly iconic snarling like frozen green like flight mask essentially.
It's scary in its own right too, but I mean, like there are a couple of out of nowhere jump scares that Raimi. I think that's going back to his horror background. What's the kid like to show you the Spider-Man's mind state of mind? But yeah, like it's funny how people are worried because with that mask, Willem can't really convey a lot of stuff because no facial expression, but it's his voice and body language that gives you the Goblin performance. Like
Let's. I guess we should talk about
yeah.
the scene where the hero and villain actually talk face to face because like obviously they would meet for the first time in a very chaotic environment, a Oscorp parade with Macy Gray of all people. But it was kind of like a weird like first outing. Like Goblin didn't expect to encounter this Spider-Man out of nowhere, even though he was like on the rise, and Spider-Man himself wasn't really like prepared to face this kind of like wacko before. So it was quite
And
it was quite an ambitious like first meeting of sorts, which would lead to a corny out of the comic book statement from Green Goblin of "We'll meet again, Spider-Man."
what's great too is that it's not often in hero movies where I mean now it's common because back then it's not common to have a scene where the bad guy and the hero just sort of just talk it out a little because it's always a lot of punching and stopping plans on here it's just him having a little chit chat with them to explain basically join me and everything it's and there's a couple of memes out of it. It is so well done though just because you got I think they compromised Willem being restricted in the mask by having at least have retractable eyelids so you can see his actual eyes, and that adds so much more personality to the mask.
And to
And
if you have like a keen sharp eye, you could actually see his mouth moving behind the those types of like one side material masks where they kind of cover like to the outside eye. If like from a distance, you would see like nothing. You'd see blackness, but if you're close up and you see light emanating from the other side, you can actually see his lips and mouth moving, and you can actually hear him that he's doing the speech on the spot.
what's funny too is that if in some shots it looks like there's pupils in the yellow eyes that kind of evoke the way the dots were drawn on the goblin in some of the Romita arts. So
Yeah, I noticed
again,
that when
I think
I noticed that when I was rewatching it like very recently, and like see that it's like, oh, it's those clever bastards managed to slip that like pupil eye thing in a very non-discreet way.
yeah, like the scene where it's most obvious where I notice it is when he's attacking the Daily Bugle and he's grabbing Jameson and you can see the dots against the yellow right there.
Oh yeah, it's always it. I noticed this too. It's like it's mostly whenever there's like fire and chaos going on. It's like the hot brimming light emanating from the fire helps give like a certain point in the goblin's eyes that gleam to make him stand out and actually have dots that look like uh, legit eyes. Especially whenever he has his like third meetup with Spider-Man in the burning building he obviously set up to like test him in a way to see if like he agrees to like his little deal of joining forces together. That typical whole like, oh, we could accomplish so much if our powers combine. Think of like all that we could achieve. Think of all that would like fall to our knees. We are exceptional, man. Blah blah blah. But It's Willem
What's
Dafoe,
funny
and
too
Willem
is
Dafoe manages to deliver that with such glee and nihilistic like delivery that it actually feels kind of refreshing in a weird, bizarre way.
hell, and of course another thing too is this is popular now, but at the time it was kind of funny to see him do the whole schizophrenic personality thing where you got Norman Osborn who's not really kind of aware of the Goblin at first, and the Goblin has its own like mindset, and he actually he has a conversation with himself in front of a mirror, but it's done so well, and you almost believe it like these are two different people inhabiting the same body. And I say it's interesting now because currently, as we're recording this in the year of our Lord 2022, Disney Plus has Moon Knight, and that one runs into the whole idea of multiple personalities living inside a single body. And I think a lot of it is owed to like the way Defoe did it with Norman way back over here.
Right, and also the Norman Osborn character, the way Willem portrays him, like he that also is facing that double life just like Peter Parker is, and you can see that where he's like just coming to check on like it's on his friend's apartment complex that they set up after graduating, or just having a Thanksgiving outing, or like just trying to like bond whenever he's with his son and saying that I was kind of wrong. I guess you could actually achieve something by graduating, and it's kind of like almost like a dual nature way of that Sam was telling. It's like you would often hear that most superheroes will have supervillains that will reflect their dark nature. Like Batman would have Two-Face, who reflects the whole notion of the dual identity, or uh, let's see, like Magneto reflecting Charles Xavier for being one to protect mutant kind, but like dashing away Homo sapiens as unworthy and evil themselves. And of course, with
We're the
Spider-Man
future,
here we
not
have,
them.
but and of course with Spider-Man here we have these two individuals who, in literally almost the same day and the same night, were granted such great powers, but one learned the consequence of flaunting that power, while the other realized was able to overcome and really take in the opportunity with that, subconsciously at the time, obviously by wiping out his competition of Quest's aerodynamics, which is trying to undermine his company. And even when his company decides to kick him out, he takes that frustration out on him also, subconsciously also, until the Goblin reveals, like, yes, it's me. I'm the one that gives you all of this. And you just let it happen because deep down you wanted this too.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of my favorite. It's a subtle thing. A fun little transition is when he's talking to the mirror, and he says he goes from talk about how I'll remove people in your way. You see him go from demented grin. He looks at his paper, and you see the grin fade away to a look of horror when he realizes that people were killed. It's just, the way Willem does it is just so so fun.
And
So
also his reactions to other characters, like it's the way that at first he's like open and welcoming to Aunt May, but then once he realizes Spider-Man's secret, is like really laid in on the scare on her as he like outright demolishes a whole like house roof to scare her into almost a catonic state. And once he realizes also that Mary Jane is showing feelings for Peter Parker and that it hurts his son Harry, that he finally has that push to really go against that girl, that girl that would have almost taken his son away for like prospect, as he once said, oh, they're all beautiful until they like sniff around for your trust funds.
yeah, all that stuff,
Roberta,
and
not so wise. Do what you want with the girl, then sweep her under after.
yeah, do what you want and broom her fast. And oh man, and what's sad is he does show some love to his son, but it's so strange because remember, when you first meet them, we'll talk about it more when we talk about Harry, but that he talks about how Harry's a little embarrassed about his status, and he tells him like, "Well, you want me to trade my Royce for a car for a private plane because you fell out of every private school I gave you?" Like, and Harry admits like, "Hey, you didn't do that for me." He's like, "Oh yeah, of course, everything was for you." But the thing is that again, he's one way with Harry. Like, what's sad is the speech that he gives Parker for commencement. That feels like the thing he should have been saying to his own son. But he just goes tells him, "Oh, you made it." Not, but the first time I've been proven wrong. But he goes to Parker and says, "If you need anything, man, this is enjoying this moment." It's like he admires Parker, and it does seem like there's a bit of a betrayal when he finds out he is Spider-Man. Like it's so funny. You see him wrestling with himself in the fireplace, about how he can't do things against him. But the Goblin persona, personified by the mask on the mantle, says betrayal must be continence. Parker has to be educated, so he wants to say, you gotta have to make him hurt and suffer, make him wish he was dead, all that stuff. So it's interesting to see. Like, this could have gone wrong in so many ways, but Willem Dafoe really grounds it, even with a look like that. Because even though that look was a lot for people to get used to, Willem really grounds it in you.
To the point where like the fact that people were cheering and hollering to see his goblin suit flying on the glider in the trailer for No Way Home definitely shows the impact that Defoe and this Green Goblin managed to evoke that really resonated with the whole generation of kids growing up, and to some extent,
And that's not.
the generation of Spider fans that grew up on the comics to witness seeing this psychotic, sociopathic maniac given like actual credence and like a real honest to god portrayal on the screen with the devilish like maniac grin that Defoe delivers.
Hell, it's like it's funny. Like my generation probably in cartoons would be more familiar with the Hobgoblin than the Green Goblin since he was the primary Goblin in the Spider-Man animated series. But yeah, Green Goblin was awesome. And also, I must add that I had a funny observation about Goblin that just made in my mind. Oh yeah, the uh the the laugh. I mean, the Goblin that in this was so inspired that in our favorite internet space of the I'm a Marvel of a DC universe, it spun off into its own little thing with the Green Goblin being a character doing Goblin blogging, on it's some random guy's channel, and his portrayal is clearly based off of the figure is based off the Defoe one, and it's just so much fun. Like I remember laughing so hard during I think it was the Zero Hour where when the Joker shows up because at that point Goblin was having a relationship with Harley Quinn
That was Happy
and
Hour actually.
happy hour and then Joker catches him and everything and I love the response when he does that thing from the Jack Nicholson like tell me you ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight and then
Yeah,
the
he
Goblin
says
responds
yeah.
and then he gets shot but oh man so I like I
Or
said
also
I just love.
and also the delivery that Joker says, "Did I ever tell you that Willem Dafoe is at one point going to play me for the original Batman movie?" Oh yes, and you know what? I thank God every day that he didn't stink up that screen with his derivative, dangerous, strange performance. And then of course that Goblin just has like the oh shit, you just hit the Goku button.
Yes, but point is, he's
You mess with
definitely an
Dafoe,
iconic.
you got to go.
Well, yeah. So he's beloved. I mean, the guy is an exceptional actor. Even now, he's still acting in projects that really resonate. Like I heard he did a really good job in that movie with Robert Pattinson in The Lighthouse, and hell, even in his parts in Aquaman, I was so happy to see him. Hell, it, I remember watching Finding Nemo, wondering why the hell Gil the fish sounds so familiar, and it clicked him, and I realized, oh my god, that's Defoe playing the fish. Yeah, so
So,
I
needless to
think
say,
we've gushed about.
the villain was definitely well done in good hands, and it's interesting. It'll be interesting to detail how the many other different foes that Spider-Man will face in the coming films. So let's
Yeah.
move on to the main love interests, the one that people either really like or really loathe to no extent. And that would be Mary Jane Watson, portrayed by Kirsten Dunst.
Ah, yes, of Interview of a Vampire fame. And hell, I remember her. She was the love interest in the girl next door in Small Soldiers, coincidentally, and she was pretty good in that.
Okay, so let's do this again. Let's see what actors could have donned the red wig and the girl next door heart vibes for Peter Parker. Let's see. Kate Bosworth unsuccessfully auditioned for it. Oh.
Interesting, she
Elizabeth
would be Lois Lane
in
in Superman Returns.
yeah. Elizabeth Banks tried, but then she was told she was too old for the role. Rude.
She
Then
did.
Cat.
She did stick around.
Yeah,
Did she?
she would be Betty Brant instead.
Yeah.
And Kate Hudson turned down the role. Another superhero love interest in the future. Eliza Dushku. That would have been good, but I see Dushku kind of more of like a badass girl vibe. And funny enough, before Dunst actually was cast, Raimi had expressed his interest in casting Alicia Witt as Mary Jane Watson, but then
At
Dunst
least
decided to audition after learning that Toby had recast, and by that notion, she felt that the film would have a bit of a more independent feel, which we discussed that that's how Sam Raimi was able to handle making the film. So
there. She was right. Her instincts served her well, but I can't see anyone else playing MJ at that time period. She really does get that right because she does have the girl next door qualities, like that face it tiger, you hit the jackpot, that iconic panel. She does have that vibe, but she also has a little bit of a sweetness to her and a little bit of tragedy because this movie establishes that she doesn't have the most easy home life.
which is why whenever Peter tries to like hit on her with the awkward like talks and stuff like I hunch stuff like that, she actually finds it a little bit endearing. It's definitely a far cry from her. I don't know how her relationship with Flash Thompson even began, but she was definitely feeling like the yeah, this is really starting to feel like I'm dating my dad all over.
Well, yeah. So the thing is that she's more than just the shrieking Violet in this movie, even though she does do a lot of screaming, but she's not. It's not just the Spider-Man save me because she kind of does move the plot forward with she's the motivation. She's the reason why he went to go wrestling and figure out how to get a car and all that stuff. She's the reason why he really went into action at the Unity. I mean, he was going to save everyone at the Unity Fair, but their relationship took another level when he ended up saving her from falling off of a balcony and all that stuff.
And then of course the iconic alleyway rain scene, which leads to that visually stunning kiss that pretty much was kind of a requisite for future Spider-Man stuff. It would even be like homage to the funny twist on the portrayal by Into the Spider-Verse, which we'll get to. But yeah, no, I don't really have that much of a disdain for Mary Jane or Kirsten Dunst in this because she has to really be that character that's okay. So in other media, the love interest usually is portrayed as kind of like a not a pushover or like unfallible, able to like really give off this aura of confidence and like sexiness and such, like Margaret Kidder did with Superman the movie, or I don't know, this actress name, Selena Kyle in Batman Returns. But
Oh yeah, no, not Michelle Pfeiffer.
Chef Five. But this we had to establish in this film that Sam had to like without saying like explaining too much and hearing through like loud screams next door or like it always feels like kind of real whenever you have like these types of neighbors that will scream and have their own arguments and you're like that neighbor that has to listen to that and empathize that that's it, or like it's kind of like a weird disconnect. Like Peter got to be raised up by these like gentle, like caring guardians, his own last family, and like sure he might have. I'm sure without a doubt that he might have had an argument or two growing up, but never to the extent that Mary Jane had to deal with, and it might have affected her in some subconscious way, because she is like really trying to struggle to gain this dream, but like the outside world is kind of like ruthless and harsh. And then here comes this super being, this like amazing figure that is able to do these amazing things despite being outnumbered and outgunned, and is able to like really make a place for herself. And she kind of admires that. And in a way, whenever she talks about this Spider-Man to Peter Parker, actually kind of uplifts him to realize that he has someone that admires him just as much as he admired her from across. And in that
But yeah,
way, it really shows like the develop. Okay, so I might have a little bit of a hiccup with her portrayal in 3, but to an extent, you can kind of see where she's coming from. She didn't have exactly a perfect family life, and that type of thing can affect a person and leave them to making questionable decisions. But to be fair, this Mary Jane, like, she won't go to an absolute stupid, risky decision. She'll like have a little bit of common sense to realize, okay, I need like a job. I'm obviously not getting these auditions like anytime soon, so I have to supplement that by working as a waitress in this moon dance diner, or the fact that she has to like really stand up and make um, her own like decisions and not like be like uh, Harry's way of showing that he's like grown confident to hand around being her father. Like his request to say, "Why didn't you wear black? My father likes black." Well, maybe you'll like this color with me.
so yeah, she does have that, and of course Harry does love her because it is a little Star Warsy to me, like episode 2-ish, but a little bit with the. You think I look pretty? I think I look beautiful, and oh man, it like you're right. She has that whole deal of living with Harry, but also like admitting like, hey, don't admit him that I'm a low level waitress. He wouldn't like that, and then stuff like that. But yeah, and she does, really does. You can see why she's inspiration for Spider-Man. Like again, I go back to that speech she gives when he says, "I know Spider-Man," and you talk about me. Well, he says, you make her feel this way and that way, and the way she reacts, because they do a lot of like reaction shots on her face, and you go, "Oh, that she does sell that so well," and it's actually pretty funny. There's in the bloopers, it's funny how often she would. Like do something and that would make her like slip up and cuss when she realizes she messed up. So I think a lot of the censor beeps in the gag reel went to her more than anything.
So,
Anyway,
and it's can we
would
just honestly mention that she is kind of gorgeous? Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of like young boys that are watching this movie like saw her as like, wow, I see why Peter really likes this girl, and
like,
I got no chance considering I know he's going to be Spider-Man, a superhero, but it's like
but anyway, like basically, to quote that famous panel everyone knows about MJ from back in the '60s,
you just hit the
face
jackpot.
it, tiger. Yeah,
Actually, the funny
coincidentally,
thing is like in some shots, wherever she gives like you actually see her face smiling, it almost looks like it's literally like a perfect one-to-one uh, appearance wise to that Mary Jane, the way she was drawn.
that was John Romita, who again that was one of the iconic artists who John Romita Sr. He's the one who drew a lot of those comics in the '60s and '70s, basically the time period when Raimi would be growing up. So of course he would want to emulate that look. So even the thick rim glasses of Parker are like the way the thick glasses were drawn in the old '60s stuff. So again, that's Raimi's Ditka Ramita love showing through with the way he frames MJ. And by the way, would you see? Can you see why some people would have the reactions they do to the MJ character? That the more negative aspects.
I mean, I could kind of see that considering that she flip flops between like having this relationship with Harry, but also this blossoming like admiration for Spider-Man, and then this earnest like one-to-one down to earth relationship with Peter Parker. But again, like as I stated, she had to grow up in a very dysfunctional family, and she is probably trying to retain some semblance of humanity, and like she doesn't
Yeah,
want to become like another aggressive New Yorker. And people like Peter Parker or Aunt May are helping to keep her like kind and earnest and like really a real standout, which would eventually help her gain her like standout um, like moments
yes.
to get like a stage play or a perfume ad or even at one point a singing notion, which she will also have her development arc in that, but we'll get to that when we get to Spider-Man 3.
Well, it's funny. Going back to Peter Parker real quick. That with how geeky and sensibility his. There's that funny bit when Aunt May's recounting the story of when MJ moved, and this is almost like Star Wars to me, but again, it's something Peter would so say when you saw her walk out, and you got like going, Aunt May, is that an angel? I'm like, of course, Peter Parker would say that seeing MJ for the first time. I think that's just so cute.
But yeah, it's kind of sad that there's not that much to say about Mary Jane, but she definitely exudes like this person. This is almost to an extent a entire driving force to Peter Parker uh, rising up to try to be a different person, a different man, and
Oh,
unintentionally with through it's literally through his interaction with Mary Jane in the beginning that would lead to getting that spider bite. So it's like these two coming together sets off this chain of events for this up and coming story for this teenager, and
but
Kirsten Dunst definitely help deliver that notion to this superhero franchise.
now let us be clear though, we're not saying that whole thing was preordained. Like for some reason, there's some creators when they do comic stories, like we got to find a way to make it like, oh, it was fate meant to be that this spider or this creature would do something that would inspire a hero or whatever. Like it was written in the stars or something like that. Like that, the guy just happened to find a spider and it bit it. But it is coincidental that MJ was the reason that he was even in near that thing. But also, I also love this interaction. They just have such good chemistry. I think like I love the interaction like when he's meeting her in the uh
That
in the science
is,
lab, and but she says, "Don't make me look ugly," and he just replies with, "That's impossible." That is such a genuine back and forth. I really love it.
and I guess that also helped build Mary Jane's confidence, considering that he chose her out of all people to be like face of his like ensemble of pictures for the school paper, and the
I
way
need one
he
with a student in it.
yeah, and it needs one as a student in it, but he chose her, and she gives like these poses, these looks. It almost helps her feel like, hey, I almost feeling like I'm being like a movie star almost. Like this guy, this person, I'm pretty sure I've seen him like next door, and
So
he's helping me feel this accomplishment and achievement even before I get graduated. That's amazing.
let's talk about also because of that back and forth. Let's talk about probably one of the more controversial aspects of the relationship. That ending scene where she talks to Peter, talking about how when she was up there dangling for life, that the thing that she was thinking about was, the last she would hope to see Peter Parker one more time and all that stuff. And of course, Spider-Man makes the decision of saying, "I
I
can't.
can't.
But you'll just be my friend." Like that whole deal. And I know some people like to harp on it. Hell, I've seen a meme template come from that the face is made during that funeral thing, and I don't get it. But point is, though, is that yeah, it is cute that she eventually wakes up and smells the coffee that the object of her affections is Parker, but due to him being Spider-Man, he has to. Like I said, I think it would mean the world to him to say yes, I do. But the fact that he is Spider-Man and that he wouldn't want her to get hurt, like he explains it in the next movie exactly why he can't be open with her. But yeah,
Especially since we've
it's
seen a scene of his aunt getting attacked because the enemy figured out his identity and obviously went for that nerve, that pinch to attack him. And it happened again when Goblin would dangle her over the bridge, which would be a liftoff of the night when Stacy died. And to actually extent, at the same time that was happening, Ultimate Spider-Man was doing a take on that and having Mary Jane be in that position, but thankfully she survived the ordeal, as did this one in the movie.
But yeah, and like I said, I do love that. You know, it must kill him inside to be the reject her like that. But
It's like
I like how
he's finally reached it. He's finally reached a point where she says, "Yes, I want to be with you," and he realizes that the thing that he wants most is just for her to be safe. And for that, he's got to
and
let
that's
her
why he
go.
says I can't. And but I do love how Sam probably had no illusions there would be a sequel, like for sure. I like how he left it ambiguous that after she kisses Parker and he walks off, she kind of has like a moment of recognition and stares back at him. And you think she's starting to put the pieces together right there. Like if they only made the one Spider-Man movie, that would have been a good way to like still hint that maybe eventually she will figure it out, right?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. But
Yeah. Anyway,
overall,
so
to conclude, Kirsten Dunst definitely delivered this this girl that literally was the meant the world to this hero, and definitely showcased the perils of what would happen if secret identities were revealed, and the risks that one hero has to take to make sure his loved ones are safe.
all right, now speaking of comic accuracy and leaping off the page, let's talk about the one big breakaway star that becomes such a fan favorite. I mean, he was established before, but this really like is one of his defining roles in my opinion. Like this guy got it.
So that being the editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson, portrayed by "I'm gonna burn your house down with the lemons." That
J.K.
J.K.
Simmons.
So
And it's funny.
so not many other actors were going to be lined up for him, but we all know very well by heart that Stan Lee really, really wanted to play the role of Jason, but the filmmakers really had to convince him that sorry, we know you would really want to do this. We know you want to do this since like this film has been pitched around in the 1980s, but you're just too old.
But
And
yeah,
but to be fair, Stanley would say that he was supportive of Simmons being cast because he thought Simmons did much better than what he would have done. So
yeah, he
that's
said
that's
if
definitely
you,
that's definitely a huge gold gold medal to give, considering that Stanley often will say that he imagines himself being the J. Jonah Jameson when he was working in the offices.
he said that I always to quote an interview, I wrote Jameson with the intention of one day that I would play him in the movie. And when I saw J.K. Simmons, I say I think he did J. Jonah Jameson way better than I ever could. And it's true. I knew J. Jonah Jameson from the way Ed Helms played him. Not Ed Helms. Ed. Yeah,
Ed Asner.
Ed Asner. That's it. Ed Asner played him in the animated series, and it's pretty 1-to-1. Even the Spider-Man game had a Jameson like that. And J.K. Simmons, I didn't see some actor in a hairpiece playing the character. I just saw the character. You know, the way
To
he
the point
snarled
that
about,
yeah, no, keep going, keep going.
the
Just
way he
let you
snarled
touch the.
about, the way he snarled about, getting a picture of Spider-Man, decent picture. The fast talking, he runs the office. The staff's afraid of him, but they respect him. He gets, and he has great comedic timing. Like one bit like that's for 200. That's outrageous. Done stuff like that. He just does the character well. And even though he's a guy with an axe to grind with the sensationalism of Spider-Man, he doesn't want to be famous. I'll make him infamous. He at least tries to cover for Parker. Like when they get attacked by the Green Goblin, he asks him who
Who's the
takes the pictures.
photographer who takes the pictures of Spider-Man?
I don't know who he is. Your stuff comes in the mail. I love how
You're
he tried to
lying.
cover for him. Although I did see a funny meme correct that when he's like, I don't know who he is. He's stuck in the mail. Then tell me his mailing address. I'm like, fuck.
Damn it.
Yeah, but it's you're right. He just he has he only has relatively few scenes in the movie, but
But
in those
any
scenes,
time he's in the scenes, he literally like earns his mark. Like you'll have a lot of people like quoting him or emulating him. It's saying like any scene with JK is like it's like a treat for him.
Hell, like, he was popular enough that he was able to cross universes and reappear in the MCU as a different version of the character, but still, he is that character.
Yeah, not only in like different movies, but also in like cartoons even. Like that that's kind of like a like aside from like the main leads getting like video game roles for movie tie-ins, like it an actor going to an anime role, you wouldn't see that again until with the likes of Matthew Lillard going from the movie Shaggy to the cart. Most of it, all of the modern like Scooby Doo cartoons.
Yeah,
Like
and
it's like you can't like think of the actor without thinking of the character, and J.K. definitely really relished in the fact that a lot of people were really egging on to see him doing Jameson again for Amazing Spider-Man because they just can't picture anyone else doing it. And to an extent, I would have to agree. It's like I know I'm the one that's like, okay, but there's these different movies and trilogies and timelines. They're all different universes, but I would be the one to admit to say that I couldn't see anyone else doing JJ other than J.K. Simmons. It's like the dude was somehow born to one day get this role, and it's like unanimously like something that he couldn't fight against the universe to do it. It's just it's preordained. This is a man that will deliver this humorous like overhyped out, outwit like demented but lovable like editor in chief that has a vendetta against the main hero deliver it, and it also he delivers it in a way that you don't hate the guy for like really lashing it out on Spider-Man. It's like even like Toby like over these movies, it's like he doesn't really like the fact that this man is like uh dirtying or selling the Spider-Man's name like on the papers. Like that's slander. It is not. I already said that. Slander is spoken.
slander is spoken
Print
and
is
print is
libel.
libel. Yeah, like the way he delivers that line, I love that part. Spider-Man, hero or menace? That he was clearly protecting. Hey, you take the photos, I make the headlines. I got it. Like, and he does have a good back and forth with Robbie. It's very great. It's like it's so funny when he's talking
He's a
about
hero. Why does he wear a mask? Huh? What's he got to hide?
and of course, like you got his bumbling assistant Hoffman, who's always coming up with really stupid ideas.
But who's being
Move,
played by Sam's brother?
Ted. No, is it Ted or Ivan?
It's Ted.
Yeah, but what I found funny though was when he was stuff like put Conway to put Conway to page 5 and give him 10%, and make it 5%. And that can't be done. Get out of here.
But yeah,
But yeah, he just
it's amazing that this guy was able to portray like what would have like obviously been like a malicious character, but he portrays it in a way that's like endearing, and it's like okay, this is a guy that's just trying to make a newspaper that's like a headline chaser. It's definitely like one that will make you like turn around the moment you see like the front page. And it
so would you say that
also, can we just point out that most all of these like Daily Bugle papers they make for the movie, like they really stand out and pop like really vividly. Like newspapers these days don't really do that anymore, do they?
well could you argue that the Daily Bugle is kind of sort of like the clickbaity nature of certain articles these days
Well,
with the way Jameson runs it?
that's kind of interesting way to think about it, but
But
no,
in
it's
recent movies it's definitely more apparent, but yeah.
but yeah, the the Daily Bugle, the way they portrayed it, it's definitely again like very comic booky. It's like this is what you think like newspapers in a superhero setting would look like. They're just like big, bombastic, bold letterings that just get right to the point with like literally say uh, Oscorp in like I can't remember. It's like Oscorp up in
Is Os
arms. Is
is
Oscorp
Norman Osborn finished?
like who is Spider Man? The
And
Daily Bugle to
New York
pay
Reds
for pictures of Spider Man.
or New York Reds dreaded spider bite. And what's great is he also reminds me a little bit of Jackie Cooper's portrayal of Perry
White.
White in the set. I keep making comparisons to 78 Superman. I don't know why.
But yeah, it is
All right.
kind of well, it's there's not much to talk about him, but like he definitely is like a man of no words. Like you see a clip of him and say, "Yep, that's the guy. That's the character. He's doing it justice. He did his assignment."
But now that's okay. Now, another character that's probably just as important as everybody. I don't know why we put him
Well,
ahead of before Jameson, but
it's kind of an iconic role, and we figure we might have like a little breather room here. But
okay. Now,
we are going to discuss about Harry Osborn. And I know a lot of people will be like, Harry isn't really that integral. Is he? You'd be wrong, sir. He, just like Peter Parker and Mary Jane and many others, would have a film-to-film character development, and as we'll get to in the other entries. But we have to begin with the first movie and say that he's like this like uh, company son who's like sorry, I'm getting a little winded, but it's definitely like the those types of archetypes where the son is living this lavish life and having to live without his mother, and
but he also
obviously
desperate
being
for his
like
father's approval.
yeah, always looking for his father's approval, but the said father's approval is given to his own best friend, and it's almost like that in a way they kind of had like this brother relationship, him and Peter Parker, that you can definitely see the highs and lows that happen in later films. But here it starts off kind of earnest. You can definitely see them being friends, even though they're like two beings from different worlds. One living in like a small Queens building, the other in a penthouse in Manhattan. But through like means or coincidences, these two different beings are brought together as like friends and growing up at high school and being like outcasts in their own way. Like even though he's rich, for some reason the bullies just kind of push Harry around. This like, or his father will fire your father. What's he gonna do? Sue me?
Apparently, I think his reputation of failing from other private schools have preceded him. So I guess like he's no like he's living in the shadow of his father, and there's no way he's ever going to measure up to the great Norman Osborn. So I think that's a chip on his shoulder, and I think he likes Peter because Peter doesn't see him for his money or for his father. He sees Harry as a friend like him. I think that's why he even hangs out with Peter.
And it's also probably why Mary Jane um, accepts to have him as like her like love interest because like unlike jocks like Flash Thompson, Harry is not all about the money. He's like actually trying to be earnest, be humble a little bit. Although you will see flashes of him like pray around trying to get daddy's approval of all things, and he probably thought like, hey, if I have like this lavish, beautiful girl by my side everywhere I go, maybe dad will notice me. Maybe he'll say, "Wow, that's a good looker you got there, son. Definitely proud of you. You definitely got one hell of a knockout there."
But no, he had to go, and I think I don't know. Would you say that was the Goblin or was that Norman? Yelling out the insecurities to Harry about how that girl's sticking around because of your personality, that type of deal. Like,
I
what do
definitely
you
believe
think?
it's the Goblin because like I don't see Norman really bashing out on Harry like that. As we've seen their little talk in the car, like Norman was really trying to like actually have the honest, humble talk with him, but Harry
Yeah,
just
like don't be
doesn't want
ashamed
to
of who
have
you
that.
are. Yeah,
I'm not ashamed of who I am. It's just what. Forget it.
yeah. So yeah, and you're right. So yeah, like it says though, Harry does have flashes of his father in him, like, but for the most part, it's kind of funny how you could buy the two as father and son, even their appearance. Like they made James Franco have a similar hairstyle to Defoe, so you kind of buy them as like father and son. And Okay, here's another subtle aspect I love in this relationship between Harry and Norman and Peter's when Peter got fired from his temporary job at Connors. He Harry kind of says, "Peter, you're looking for a job, Dad. Maybe you can help him." And you see the biggest smile on Norman's face when when he's offered that position, and then when he says, "I like to keep what I earn, what I keep," and everything like that. It's funny. He gives another admiration of Parker that makes Harry feel like, damn it, like that should be him, not Peter. But the whole like, I understand. You're trying to make it on your own steam. That's great. Like you can see that they cut to Harry and he has a sort of reaction of, oh man, I'm pretty sure he wants to adopt him. Like he made that joke earlier, like he doesn't seem so bad. Yeah, if you're a genius, I guess he wants to adopt you. Like that little playful ribbing.
Yeah, although at some point you could definitely feel like there's just a little bit of a hint. There's a little subtle like animosity towards it that you'll see building up across the films. And it definitely doesn't help that he literally sees his father's like dead body being laid down by this Spider-Man guy. That it would definitely really cause a big stir between Peter and Harry's relationship, considering that Peter would have to be taking photos of this man who he believes to have murdered his father and got away with it. And,
Yeah, and that comes more into play in the second movie, but yeah.
but for now, we see Harry is like he's not as good kid, but he's a millionaire's son that's just wanted to be seen as like an equal to the likes of Peter Parker, and you definitely see that he almost had that like little rise to fame in his mind, but as soon as he saw like he lost his girl and lost his father, that's where you definitely see like he has to build the foundations again and had to really change his state of mind for future movies.
Like he said, he swears on his father's great at Spider-Man will pay someday. But he said that, but in the same breath, he's telling Peter, "Oh, thank God, you're the only family I have." Like so, in the same breath, he's cursing the man, but also praising Peter. So it's even though they're both the same character, obviously it's going to cause conflict when he finds out the two are the same. But also, I think what's sad too is the fact that Norman does open up to Harry before he goes after MJ and fights Spider-Man on the bridge. So he said, "When I come back, we're gonna like really open up and everything. It's just like I stall some few inequities." And then when he does see his father again, he's dead. And again, at the hands of the bug is from what he thought. So it's like, but I always find it funny for some reason his reaction when he sees Spider-Man and says, "What have you done?" And he reaches for a pistol, and Spider-Man does that Batman thing of when the frame is away, when the frame cuts back to him, he's out the window. He does
Yeah,
that.
but so yeah, let's definitely give like Franco props for delivering like a character I'm sure not a lot of people know outside of like the cartoon or maybe even the comics. Oh goodness, the comics is a huge hassle to talk about the what they did with the Osborns. Oh my
The
god,
infamous
the
Drug
the
USA comic.
uh all the list is like endless of all the sins these Osborns did. But we're
Well, yeah,
in the movie universe, so we don't get to discuss all of that. Uh,
yeah. So
until next
there's
time,
also
we'll see Harry Osborn off and see him having to take the reins of his father's company now. See how well he
now
does
here's
handle that.
now here's some characters that are lifted whole cloth from the comic in a way that I think that this is some of the most definitive portrayal of them. Rosemary Harris as Aunt May and Cliff Robertson as Uncle Ben Parker, who I like to
Uh,
keep reminding me of. When they mentioned, okay, actually, this is more relevant in Amazing Spider-Man, but uh, the when they think about the days of their youth, I can't help but think back to that infamous spin-off Marvel tried to make into the love comic romance called Trouble.
no, no,
While
no,
talking, yeah, there's a line in Amazing Spider-Man he says, "He's really young and stupid. You remember us when we were young and stupid?" And Derek right away said, "No, I don't want to remember you when you were young and stupid." Anyway, but yeah,
we'll
so
get to that again. Probably, I'm sure you'll bring it up when we go to the Amazing. But we are dealing with the what we describe as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man trilogy, as the MCU like earnestly likes to label it as.
Yeah, so that's a great name. So yeah, so these characters fit when you think of Uncle Ben and Aunt May, they fit exactly like the '60s comics. I think Cliff Robertson looks just like the way Uncle Ben was drawn back in those days.
Yeah, maybe the hair is a little bit more whiter in the comics, but it's definitely got that like wise beyond his years kind of look to the earnest like. But he's also very grounded. He's not like the type of like a pushover, nice kind like uncle. He's like when he notices like Peter slacking in certain things or getting to fights, he has to put his foot down and say, "Okay, look, we need to have a talk. I'm sure you're going through things right now, but you really got to take one step at a time at this because you're you're gonna be like you're you're almost graduating. You're gonna have to live off your life and like make choices that are going to determine who you are, and I just really don't want you to make the wrong decisions. These are the years where a man becomes the man he's going to be for the rest of his life."
And it's great because he does do some great subtle facial things, like that really endear you to him. You know, he also kind of reminds me of too. He reminds me of Glenn Ford's portrayal of Jonathan Kent in. God damn it! I keep referring back to '78 Superman. It was such a good blueprint.
Why do you think I mentioned it in our prologues? Like the very foundation of Spider-Man really rests on Superman's like success. And I'm sure Sam Raimi looked to that movie and say, "Okay, so how did this superhero movie manage to like start the whole thing? How did it succeed?"
Yeah,
And he
and
would
so
learn
Cliff
it's like,
Robertson.
okay, stick to the basics, make it feel like a comic book that's come to life, but also make it feel timeless.
Yeah, so yeah, but okay, Cliff Robertson does portray him, and he does offer like you can't help but feel super heartbroken during the last talk they have in the car where when Parker blows up at him and blows him off, and just that face he makes, and
Yeah,
it's well again
it's
well
it's
like
the teenage angst really like
the
being
whole "you're not my
detrimental
father"
to the
thing.
whole thing.
Yeah,
But
and then
and like it's also humbling that we like he doesn't have as much of a screen presence in the movie, obviously because of what his fate will be. But you see him enough and get to know him well enough that the moment that he's dying on the street and just like on his last breath and teary up to see Peter just seeing him like going out like this weak, frail, dying on like this side of the street, like just breaks him, and it just breaks the audiences to see something like that.
well, it's well done too. Like they did admit in the commentary they said that originally the idea was that Peter would find Uncle Ben already expired, but I think Sam rethought and thought no, let him have one last moment, and that's what really hits home Spider-Man's guilt. Like, the guy, the wrestling guy says, yeah, you're worth 100 to me instead of the promised thing. And when he gets robbed, Spider-Man decides, just like in the comic book, I'm gonna let the guy run past me, and that guy ends up leading to the result of the death of Uncle Ben. Directly or indirectly remains to be seen. The later movies have worse to say about that, but either way, Spider-Man failing to
Well,
act.
I'll get to my defense when we get to Spider-Man 3, but let's for now let's just in, in here and now let's just focus on the fact that this guy, because of Peter's mistake to like just stand by and do nothing just because he has the means to do so, just because he feels like he's entitled with his special abilities and powers, and the fact that he just made Randy Savage his bitch in front of hundreds of thousands in a cage match, that he feels like, oh, what do I gain out of like stopping this like mugger? It's your fault that you like got jumped on
Cheated
in the
me.
first place.
Yeah. So, and when you see, and there's that smug satisfaction on his face when when where the guy tells him when he said, "I need money. I missed that's my problem." When he says, that guy took my money," and then he says, "Hey," he shot it back at him. "I missed the part where that's my problem." And he has a look on his face of like, "Yeah, the guy got what he deserved." And then that a scene later,
So when he learns that the
see
fact that his
that,
uncle
and
has
I was
died because this very man, the man that he saw run past him is the one that, in his mind, shot Uncle Ben, took their family car, and just ran away with the goods, all just for like profit. Like he let a man die just for gains, and it's by Peter's hand that he didn't step in when he should have. That he lost this like wonderful person that he grew up since he was like, I don't know, maybe like 2 years old.
But yeah, it's like Raimi gave us enough scenes with Uncle Ben for us to like him. That when he does die, it does hurt and everything. So I mean, he's very likable. Like hell, I love it when we first meet him and he's talking about how I know
Computers are
even Aunt May
taking
points
all of
out.
his jobs.
I love the computer salesman, computer analyst. My God, even the
Computers
computer
need
the
analysts these
analyst.
days.
It's a great scene, and Rosemary Harris does a great job playing off of him. Like you buy them as a cute, loving couple. So when he does die and she has to shoulder taking care of Peter by herself, she still keeps. She's just so I don't know,
She's
just
so sickly sweet. You could get diabetes off of just her own smile and warmth and comfort alone.
you can see why she's Parker's strength. That's why you feel so scared for her when she's terrorized by the Goblin for that all for the virtue of knowing Spider-Man. That's she is definitely off the Ditko era of comics. So Raimi really stuck to that. It really did work so well. I mean, even though we get different. I mean, some people would say, "What's a 20-year-old living with 60-year-old aunt and uncles that are probably going to be dead within a few?" Like, I know as the years went on, that kind of thing and the age gap grew. That kind of became a little ridiculous for some people. I think that's why in current incarnations they kind of have to age them down a little.
I mean, to be fair, I have aunts that don't look like they're pushing their 70s.
Yeah,
So
so that's why I make that joke in Civil War when he says, I still can't believe that she's an ant," and she says, "Well, we all come in all shapes and sizes." She said back,
yes, I
"Ah,
did.
Marissa Tomei." Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
to be
we'll talk
to be
about
fair,
that.
to be fair, Marissa actually did like actually eventually look to be more like an ant figure.
Eh, Yeah, you got a point. But so yeah, but Rosemary Harris she sticks around and thank God for her sticking around for the trilogy. She did a really good job. And like it says, and I like that Cliff does say the immortal line that is like the definition of Spider-Man. With that, remember, great power comes great responsibility. Like that's just his driving mantra. And even though it would be years before we actually get someone saying it the way it was said in the comic of, with great power must also come great responsibility. We'll get to that when we get to that. But uh, they're good. They're really good. I think.
Yeah,
Is there anything more we could?
they're they're to sum up, they're a wholesome, like essential side characters that don't get the shaft is like, okay, so you remember like in a Superman movie where you have the scene where uh we see Ma and Pa Kent raising up Clark Kent, but then like through the third act they kind of disappear almost. I mean, one for the plot centric reason, but you don't even see like Ma Kent for the rest of the movie.
Does she
But
even appear in any of the sequels?
I know she appeared in. No, she was dead in four, then somehow came back to life in Returns. Try to
Well,
wrap your
Returns
head
is
around
an
that one.
alternate. Returns is supposed to be like an alternate Superman 3, I believe.
Right. Uh,
Anyway, so yeah, I think they're good. So anyway, this isn't in your notes, but we'll make a little segue about some other great aspects of the filmmaking production. So one, let's talk about. We'll be remiss not to mention the heart and soul of this series, the music, which is done by the great Danny Elfman, who's already brought many hero themes to life at that point, including the iconic Batman theme.
mhm. And uh, but
He
yeah,
was
the,
like the go-to guy for music. Hell, they even made him do the music for Hulk, which I do love that Hulk theme, that little bam 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 bam. Like I would kind of wish that was brought back. But yeah, just the way he did the Spider-Man theme, like even the way it opens up, like that's part of the reason this movie is so rewatchable is just the opening, just the when you get that slow, somber strings gearing up the Spider-Man theme while the Columbia picture logo comes into view, it just you teleports you to that mode. Then it starts revving up, and then the Marvel symbol comes up
Like
with those drums,
as
and
soon
then
as you hear like those like bongo drums playing, or are they bongo drums or like the
we'll go with that. They're bongo drums.
but they definitely give off a bongo theme. But as soon as you hear those like bongos going off, everyone's eyes will light up and go, "It's Spider-Man! It's a Spider-Man movie! Oh my god, yeah!"
And then yeah, this that theme alone is just. I mean, there's a reason why people got excited for when things happened in No Way Home when that music made its reappearance, but that was the anthem for Spider-Man for years. Like just Danny Elfman captured the character, and it's kind of two themes in one. It's the main Spider-Man motif, which is that bam 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 bam, but you also have the Parker theme a part of it, that whole bam 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 bam. It just they blend the duality pretty well in that music.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that I grew up working in high school band, but I'm not really that well versed in like discussing music theory. But the best way that we can describe it, the music that Danny Elfman delivers actually helps enhances the feel that Sam Raimi is going to give for again this feeling of watching a comic book movie. It's like these dramatic flourishes, these huge grandiose fights, and like burning
But
buildings, or
also these small
cascading
little
cascading parades, the big like victorious comeback for Spidey in his final fight with Goblin, but also is able to help flourish with romantic themes wherever Mary Jane's like in view and Peter Parker's kind of like in a little hopeless romantic daydream, or like
oh, you got the reflective
having to learn,
music.
or yeah, whenever we have to have like a sad scene, or that little I don't know why I really love the motif he gives whenever Peter is learning. It's the way he delivers the music. Like in the comics, like Peter has to explain like, "Huh, I feel so weird, but I wonder why." Wait, it's a spider bite. Somehow during the lab experiment, it must have been radioactivated, and
And so on and
that
so
must have
forth.
given me these agilities of a giant human spider.
The
But
human spider.
it's with Danny Elfman's music where without words, Peter manages to put together the fact that oh my god, the spy I have for the spider, that must mean I somehow have spider-like abilities, and the fact that he tests this on climbing up a wall
And you get
and
those little
the
horns for
building
each
the
bump,
rising
bump,
sensation of like
bump,
it's
bump.
unreal, unbelievable. Oh my god, I am a freaking superhero.
Yeah, the music really does sell that. And also he has a great twisty demonic theme for the goblin that I like how it has many variations. You have that sinister version that plays when he's talking to himself. You got that more grandiose operatic version that plays when he's attacking the bridge. What's funny is it almost sounds a little heroic. In fact, I think that exact motif was used as a heroic flourish in another movie, but again, we'll get to that when we get to that. In fact,
But
I always remember the Goblin theme because it was always the menu music. Like if you plugged in the Spider-Man Disc 2 DVD that held the special features, it is told from the Goblin's point of view because the Goblin is the disc character on that one, and everything was the Goblin theme. Transitioning in between the the thing, like you would go to the maybe it would have that bam 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 bam. Like I was just always enjoying that. Oh, but let's talk about the triumph that is the end swing choir.
oh
That
yes, that's
that
such
is just
it really
go on.
helps to deliver that. Okay, so again, we're gonna borrow this movie again because let's be real. It was the first superhero big movie that everyone takes notes from. The way that John Williams' score flourished to show Superman rising up to the sky and feeling like he's like bigger than this blue world that we're all living on, but giving off that proud, like confident smile. It's like, yeah, everything's
Aw.
gonna be a-okay from here on out. And Danny
Yeah, I think I
Elfman
just got
delivers.
tears hearing that.
What? What?
I got tears hearing that description. Beautiful. Anyway, go on.
Oh, well, to be fair, Superman's my favorite character. But the way Danny Elfman delivers this grand, epic finale to wrap up, showing this swing across New York, it's like a little bit somber, but in the end, it shows like this man that is like it that started off as seemingly a nobody is now able to soar skyscrapers and look down upon an entire city of 8 million people, and is willing to do what it takes to protect every single one of them.
What is great is that on your Spider-Man DVD, that usually is the main menu theme, which is the final swing music.
Yeah.
That bam, 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 with the choir and everything. It's just so uplifting.
Yeah, even Samuel Hill music on YouTube will find some way to, whenever he's doing like different Spider-Man theme editions, will always try to put the end theme in there because it is such like an uplifting thing to end off on for a mix like that. And
Okay, then it.
he's got a point on that one.
Yeah. So that Elfman score is great, and I'm excited to hear that he's reuniting with Sam for the first time in 20 years to do music for his upcoming Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which should be coming out this week by the time this video goes up, hopefully.
Well, you better be pushing it, dude. I'm gonna be like nag you like day to day, like every time you meet up, it's like, hey, bro, hey, how's that Spider-Man video coming? You doing great?
Because I have a poster in my room right now of Spider-Man, and it says the date May 3rd and everything. So I got myself a deadline.
Yeah.
So
So,
anyway,
uh,
stunts. You said you mentioned stunts and sets and everything. You want to go
yeah.
in that
So,
the
um,
craftsmanship here.
so again, Sam Raimi is a practical guy. He will find ways to make absurd scenarios seem possible with his patented friendship of his crew that he's worked on since the Evil Dead days. And a lot of effects in the Evil Dead are ones you like never in a million years imagine being able to pull off without some CGI help. And these guys were able to make like a night in a cabin be insane. And they,
You know what?
they
Speaking of Evil Dead, there's one effect that blows my mind to this day. I think you know what one it is. It's when he like sees a reflection in the mirror and he touches it, and then the thing just ripples like water. That always blows my mind every time I see it. I don't know why.
I think the effect is the one in the sequel wherever he's looking at his mirror and all of a sudden a reflection jumps out of him and tells him, "No, dude, you are not right. You just cut our girlfriend in half with a chainsaw. Does that sound sane to you?"
Yeah, I mean, hell, I love that one where he looks in the wrong book and stretches his face out
Oh,
in
what
Army of
book?
Darkness.
But
But
yeah,
anyway,
Sam
but
was
yeah,
able to pull
Spider-Man.
that practicality to make this Spider-Man like it's almost like Sam is trying to do what Superman did. It's like you will believe a man can fly, whereas you will believe a man could crawl up walls and swing through New York.
Well,
And
he does.
certain iconic shots like Pierre learning to crawl on walls is a practical effect. That's obviously a huge effect where they made him crawling on his hands and feet like as normal, and they had to build an entire set around to uh, look like it was what it would be if you were looking from the sideways. So
Oh, it's just like that iconic effect in Nightmare on Elm Street, where the camera is fixed, but everything is in a rotating room. So that's where you get effects like the blood gushing out of the the bed and stuff. They just simply turn the room upside down.
yes, exactly.
But when you have the camera down, it looks like it's going up. So even though Maguire is on a thing going, sideways, when you had the camera at a 90-degree angle, when you turn it back to its normal side, it'll look like he's going vertical instead of horizontal. So again, simple camera trick, but it really works.
Yeah, it really helps to deliver an effect that strangely you don't see them doing that much in the other Spider-Man movies. I don't know. It always feels like anytime he's crawling, it's like him always being suited up, or to at least an effect in MCU, it feels like he's just kind of like just dangling off the wall there. Or I
But
don't know.
yeah,
I probably
but
need to
yes,
be refreshing, but it's the way that they handle Spidey's wall crawls or web sticks in the movie. It definitely feels like, yeah, this is exactly what it would look like if a guy was crawling on a brick wall. And I do love the fact that they actually give a visual cue of how he's able to climb these walls, like these little, like I guess little pricks. They're able to like stand out like hairs of a spider that's able to defy gravity themselves.
yeah. What's funny too is that again, there's some effects that age well, and there's some that are very like rough. And it's meant to be goofy. There's a funny bit where during that rediscovery of his power scene, where he's like running, and the effect is clearly Maguire on a treadmill with a projected, buildings whizzing past him. It really does add, a moment of like laughing at it, just not taking itself too seriously. So you got a chance to like giggle along with the movie when you see that moment when he's like, I mean, you can't help, but it's so charming. You can't help but like think of it when you think of that movie, like, oh yeah, there's that part where he's on a treadmill running with the background running behind him.
And yeah, a lot of stunt work, especially in like the Bonesaw cage match, are pretty. Again, taking cues from the slapstick comedy of showing like the recoil and the like aftermath of certain hits, definitely shows like that. Okay, so to give Tobey Maguire some credit, he had to actually learn to uh, learn spiders, actual spiders, when he was like cast, and also had to learn from a wireman to simulate the arachnid-like motion. And then, of course, he had to have a special diet so that he could look like that uh, morning reaction when he sees himself in the mirror.
But what I love is that when he's in the wrestling, when he gets down on all fours, he kind of does a pseudo spider pose that's evocative of his Spider-Man poses. And I always get a
Yeah,
thrill when I watch that.
the McFarlane like zany poses that he does.
Yeah, I love that scene. And hell, even like the fight with the Goblin, he does a lot of brutal, like almost wrestling moves on him. Like there's a bit when Spider-Man tries to like get out of range by webbing up, but then Goblin just does like a somersault and just body piles him onto the ground and then starts like punching him in and everything. And, like he got an epic beatdown in that fight.
And to at least give credence to visual effects, like the one visual effect I'm sure everyone will say it's like it aged like fine wine is the slow mo reaction to the crowbats that Goblin throws in the fire building whenever he tells him he's out of his mind. Wrong answer.
And that was entirely CG, but you convinced that that's like a guy in a suit like flipping around all these razor bats, going through the arena.
Like you could
Although I
definitely,
like it when
yeah, you could definitely feel like every like I'm sure the visual effects artists are pleased to know that this whole situation was going to be slow mo, which gives them more time to get work on the detail rather than the like momentum of the effect.
I,
Which
I think Sam Raimi does admit though he still sees things that would have made him say, "I wish I could have done that differently." He still to this day says when he sees a few of the shots while he's doing that jump, he said that could have been a little more graceful or a little more awkward. He said I could have done this and that, but because and
to
it's
be
fun.
fair, like Spider-Man is in like a huge fire hazard of an environment and has to avoid these like deadly projectiles without like running his costume against flames and all that.
I also like it when he does that Neo style, go on his back and miss the razor bat that almost hits him and it collides with another razor bat and explodes.
Yeah, he also does that for his fight with Flash Thompson. I'm playing in mute.
Oh yeah, he
While we're doing that.
does.
He does that, so he always has that move with him wherever he needs it. And
No,
today
and
they had to have Toby doing that without the costume. So
oh, I like it when he has that darn tray stuck to his wrist, and that's a practical effect. And a little bit of comedy when he tries to use the door, but the tray's still stuck to the door on the other side.
Yeah, again, Sam Raimi's little slapstick love
And
and
like
all
we
that.
mentioned earlier, that catching all the food from the slip was a practical effect of Toby having to like look up and put the everything on the tray in that speed. The
Yes,
great reflex scene.
you could definitely look at that and say, oh, oh goodness, like for like such a small moment, they could have just like CGI'd it. But it's like, no, you would not believe for a second if you saw like CGI like cartons landing on a tray. You would believe that that was actually believable. But the
Yeah,
fact
I
that
mean, come on,
they look
we
and feel real with the actual weight of gravity behind them, that seeing that you just go, holy shit, that's actually impressive. And to so continuing on, there's more stunt work in this movie because we have to remember that this is like a very active, very acrobatic character, and if they couldn't deliver that, the whole movie would have fallen flat. It's basically just a guy that just swings from building to building and just like beats up bad guys. Like no, they had to get at the very crux of it. They had to get the fluidity of showing the flourishing swings of this Spider-Man, like right, because if they like animate like weird poses for no apparent reason, people are just good. Like I know they look cool in comic panels, but like there are some comic panels in certain comics that I look at and go, okay, how does a human body anatomy do that?
namely anything by Rod Liefeld or Todd McFarlane.
But here you can definitely tell that they worked really hard to really I'm sure they like studied a lot of like high wire acts and like understanding the momentum of like arching swings, like the end scene that we see where he's taking that huge
You
swing
know
going
what's
across
an
the paths.
underrated sorry. You know what's an underrated practical fight that I don't think you get brought up often? The fight in the rain. All of that is purely stunt work.
Oh yes, because if they CGI like okay, in certain movies like Rain is like a nice get out of jail free card for CGI effects. Like it in our case, we feel like the Godzilla 98 works well with the rain going off against like the lizard, or even for certain scenes of Jurassic Park movies, the rain will help add to the effect. But it for like human fight scenes in rain, if not done properly with CGI, it will look really silly and very video gameish.
But yeah. Uh, but it's funny. I think that's based off of the old Tobey Maguire screen test where he had to fight a bunch of guys shirtless just to show that he can do the role. Oh, but you're right. But so yeah, Spider-Man CG still holds up. Like again, another thing that's a CGI is that entire end swing sequence.
Right, but they were able to animate that and mocap that efficiently to show that that's you could definitely believe that that would be a human being with gifted spider like abilities would be swinging across the city like that.
You know what's funny? Um, uh, I think just to show the extent of the effects, um, they did that thing where they that scene when Spider-Man is going after Uncle Ben's killer. Their first full effect shot was like of that suit, the homemade suit crawling on the wall, and I think they told the producers this is actually Toby doing the stunt of getting on a wall and jumping, and they were blown away thinking that was a an actual stunt that they shot, and there was actually just a CG shot.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about the suits very briefly. So
No, that's the costume design, amazing.
I did love the fact that they went out of the way to make two different costumes of Spider-Man. One where he's like it's a prototype suit, which is the wrestling outfit. It's funny that he made this after he conceptualized like the iconic comic design in that montage. And I got to say that this Toby's Peter Parker is quite the artist. Like he was able to flaunt the type of skill in high school that I wish I had at the time. And I've only gotten around recently to even coming close to that. And with like felt markers, like what the hell?
I gotta say, I draw my Spider-Man whenever I do get on drawing Spider-Man based off of the way Ramita and Parker draw. Like, I think they actually got an actual Marvel comic artist at the time to draw that one that became the eventual Spider suit, the iconic one.
Hmm. But yeah,
But
talk
yeah,
about the wrestler suit. It, it it's very basic, but it still comes across in a way as the spider suit. Obviously, it doesn't have the full mask. You're able to see his eyes and nose a little bit, and the spider emblem is actually like etched on. Like I don't know, it's like a
spray
probably
paint,
painted
I
on,
would guess.
spray painted with an etch, and he has like worker gloves and tracksuit pants. Yeah. I remember having this action figure of where it's like this suit change, and I'm pretty sure I demolished the wrestling outfit because it was like this rubber material, and the pants ripped probably at like my fifth time playing it, trying to get it on him. But it's definitely a very like eye catching piece, even though it's not the iconic Spider suit. In fact, I would be surprised if con goers actually dressed up to look like that wrestling Spider-Man suit. In fact, yeah, kind of think of it now I said it out loud. Maybe that should be the basis for what my next con event should be. Like the
Oh yeah,
prototype Spider-Man outfit. That'd be pretty cool.
a lot of people actually have made that costume as their thing. I think even Channel Pup, uh, a Spider-Man fan in the UK, did admit he did make that suit. I think.
Yeah, it's to be fair, it's like it's a very easy homemade suit. Like well, I'm sure like when we get to the end, we'll compare and contrast like all the different Spider-Man's like prototype suits. Yes, even into the Spider-Verse, Miles did have a prototype Spider-Man suit. One that involved a cape. Nope, that's a no on the cape. I liked it. Capes are a no. Don't disrespect the costume.
But yeah, it was it, it's funny. It is believable that a guy who lives with his aunt and doesn't have the best money would come up with an outfit like that,
And
right?
I think about it, I'm pretty sure you probably used that $100 that you got from that wrestling stint that like curb stopped to get some bait start of some material to work off to making this new suit. Which I gotta say, at the time, I know that later movies would get like that reaction. I mean, it's like, oh my god, it looks like this comic, it looks accurate to this comic, and oh my god, this looks accurate to this comic. But this is the 2000s where they were trying to make a suit that's believable. Actually, no, I'm going to say I am so happy that they were able to stick to their guns to make at least a red and blue suit because this was a time where studios were feeling like that pressure of not wanting to look like campy, like cartoony, like kids materials whenever they have superhero movies. Because, like, of course, at the time we had the 2000s X-Men movie, and they like dashed away with the yellow spandex in order to have black leather because everything had to be black leather. Thanks to that Matrix.
Jeez- Jesus, you guys go out in these things.
What were you expecting? Yellow spandex?
That line never gets old. And it's funny, the guy who says yellow spandex is too much is now a guy who pals around with a talking blue hedgehog on a regular basis. Isn't life's funny that way, huh?
Yeah, but I'm so glad they had that Sam put his foot down and say, "No, you have got to have this outlandish character because, like, even like in My Hero Academia, they point out the reason why they have to have such outlandish costumes is to garner attention from people so that they know that they're here to help and are like within like a help distance. If you see like someone dressed up in that outfit. It's like, oh, they're not like blending out of sight. They're right there. I could see them. I could go there for help, and that would definitely push to like Peter's notion of wanting to help with his great power as much as he could, which would
Hell,
lead to
and
the montage in New York City of all these accounts of people seeing the Spider-Man cross.
but yeah, uh, you're right. So it is definitely a Romita Ditko inspired, but mostly Romita, like Romita Senior, I think. Like that's like the '70s Spider-Man,
Yeah,
where he
and
kind of had like that linebacker build.
yeah, and I distinctly remember. I think they were teasing that design when the Spider-Man games were coming out, and the PlayStation they they would have these like, oh, this is what the Spider-Man is gonna probably look like with the movie, and you have like these like glossy eyes and this like really thick like outline of the webs and a little bit of a darker magenta red or like probably black replaces the blue, but not obviously because this is 2000s. We thought we were gonna replace color with non-color,
Well, I think it was more
but
of a callback to the fact that when Ditko did design Spider-Man in the '60s, I think he did intend it for black and red, but to give it that blue tint, it gave the editors, the colorists, the impression that it was blue. So the next issue drew him all blue and red instead of black and red, I think.
which is funny
But
considering that the color choice for another future Spider-Man would be black and red with Miles Morales. So it's almost like it's come
oh
full
yes,
circle.
but yeah. So you're right, but it is. You look at Spider-Man in this movie, and it is, well, it's Spider-Man. It's like Superman when that how we keep coming back to this. It's like when you I think what Richard Donner said is, I don't want him to say, hey, look, that's Robert Redford in a cape. I want him to go and say, look, that's Superman. So you get that same impression with Spider-Man. Like you go, that's fucking Spider-Man. That's the way I remember
And
him. Red and
and
blue, web.
and let's also say that this suit is also practical. It's like I don't know whenever he's out of the costume and he's holding the costume in his hands, it looks like a very different material. It's like not too much latex, but it's also not too much latex. I mean spandex. It's like some material I'm not familiar with, but it
They
definitely
had to
feels like
glue him
it's
into. They had to glue
yeah
him into the suit, if I remember the stories. Mhm.
yeah. But in like future movies or in this movie, whenever he's holding the costume, it's almost like this like really shriveled up but really like earnest feel to it. And also, it's very practical in the fact that obviously the way that they shoot the New York scenes, it's always kind of like this like sunny haze almost, and you remember like, oh yeah, this guy has to swing and constantly see the sun in his swing, so he needs something to kind of glint off the sunlight from his eyes when he's like has to swing these daring defying like heights.
On top of that, the like you said, that Sunny Hayes was in all the posters, like the poster where he's crawling up the side of the skyscraper, which is the inspiration for the thumbnail of this review, or the more infamous recalled poster where he's on the towers with the towers reflected in his eyes pre 9/11. So it's funny. I'm sure we've mentioned this before in other reviews about heroes, but I mean, we remember that iconic teaser where it's like this intense robbery and everything. And you don't know what it's for. You're in the middle of a robbery and these guys are getting out, but then the helicopter gets like stuck, and then he sees in a big old web.
A big web hung up by the twin towers, and it
And,
was definitely a trailer that caught the world's attention. It's like, oh my god, it's Spider-Man, and
and
I'm sure a lot
I
of
saw,
people are able to these days are able to get past the the heavy notions to seeing the towers when they know that this because of this trailer. It really before that event happened, this trailer was shown across the that summer of 2001. It definitely got audience's attention to say, yes, I will definitely see this movie.
yeah. So okay, but yeah, so the suit is very good, and they made that little face shell so that the suit can maintain its shape. Because ask anybody who's bought a Spider-Man costume off of the shelf. Uh, when you put on the tight mask, it tends to like show your nose and mouth, and you look more like the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man than than Spider-Man. But yeah, you need a face shell to like get the shape that keeps that hero shape, like the way it's drawn, and it has like magnets for the lenses so that the eyes can always be in the right position.
Hmm. Yep.
Oh, also, it's a lot of silk screening put in it. Not only is it's not just plain red and blue. There's like a texture. There's like the blues have like this grid pattern, and the red they didn't overcomplicate it, but they didn't make it just simple spandex either.
Right. They could have just simply made it like one bold color, but they that no, this is a suit that this guy has to wear like day to day on end, and has to constantly look good against like fighting these freaks and weirdos.
However, there does exist a Spider-Man suit that is like a one-to-one of the comic and has like bright, bold, simple colors, and it looks great. And that would be one of the Orlando meet and greet Spider-Man suits, I believe.
Oh
There's
yeah,
a,
no, I've
like,
actually had the meet and greet experience. I even have a picture of it with my brother. I think it was like first or second year we went down to Florida, and
but
like whoever they assigned these guys to be Spider-Man, it's like they really captured that essence of this cocky but humble superhero just meeting like being among the people and just taking these photo ops to make them feel like they're with their favorite superhero.
I think it was in the mid 2000s around the adventure that they made that spec because since then the suit has been replaced and some of the newer ones were not as like accurate as that one from the mid 2000s was. But yeah, so there's a guy who did a whole history on it on YouTube. Godzilla Mendoza, highly recommend him. Funny guy. But anyway, the suit
That's
for Spider-Man's great. What about the suit for good
well,
old Gobby?
we've already discussed how no one was really a fan of the Goblin suit, but it is like practical. Again, it's an aerodynamic suit to withstand flying and modulate temperature and help with enhancing strength to someone who's
And
already got
ballistics.
enhanced strength. And it definitely
Oh,
kind of it almost I, I'm kind of like being generous to say this, but it also kind of gives like this Geiger-esque feel to it with like the way it's
it is.
lined up with. It's very inhuman while still being human,
Yeah, you know what's funny
which
is
should help portray
there.
this like notion that this is a green goblin.
What's great is that even his shoes have like little goblin claws in it. If you notice, and you definitely notice it in the shot when he's talking to Spider-Man when he's passed out, and there's like a shot of his feet from behind, but you can see like there's like these little claws, goblin claws on the on the boots.
I want to know, I would be love to be the fly on the wall to want to hear like what the scientists Oscorp thought of to make that a practical feature.
Well, I think the flight mask was made by Norman,
Yeah,
fabricated by him. I
obviously,
think
but I'm talking about like the goblin feet.
because it is even on
Was
that
that supposed
test.
to help? Was that supposed to help with the attaching to the glider? Oh, I guess that kind of answered that question then.
Oh, speaking of, the glider was mostly practical for shots when the goblin had to like hover on it and like the guns came out and everything. Obviously, it was CG for some of the more like dramatic, flips and loop de loops, but I think it was a levitating platform for Defoe to hang off of at most of the time.
I also gotta say, I love that they were able to make. Okay, so the goblin glider in other media always looks like this gargoyle or bat thing with wings that this like crazy green person is flying on, and yet they're able to make this glider look like it actually is like an inhuman design, but also very like not purposely intimidating in a cartoonish Halloween way, but actually still having like uh, aesthetic designs that actually still emulate that almost looks like it's a bat out of hell.
And it's all the weapons make sense because it was made for the military, so of course it would have machine guns and blades and everything.
And also orange pumpkin bombs.
The pumpkin bombs I can't explain, but those are fun.
Actually,
Uh,
I'll be honest. I love the design of these pumpkin bombs. They're just like very like sleek, slim. They almost give like the look of like the thermal detonator from Star Wars. It's like this little
I mean,
tiny thing, but everyone will freak out if they see that in their vicinity.
well, hell, we got like super giddy during our reaction to the No Way Home trailer when the Goblin Bomb showed up for a split second, if you remember.
Yes, so that again credence to the filmmakers for this movie to help make such small but very practical changes to these characters from these comic books actually still give them their own identity that millions of people just seeing one image of it for like a movie like 19 years later will draw quite a huge reaction from like crowds of millions.
And I'm sure we've noticed this many times and pointed it out, but the lighting, sometimes they would shoot a purple light at the Goblin costume to give him like almost like the cone on his head is purple, like if he's wearing the hat. Yeah.
So
So anyway,
I'm sorry they tried. Well, they also did add the purple color to his glider, so it still has the green and purple aesthetic.
yeah. So similarities and differences between the comics. Let's go ahead and talk about that.
So obviously, one obvious thing everyone's going to say is that this Peter Parker Spider-Man doesn't have mechanical web shooters. So this was a concept again taken from James Cameron's pitch for Spider-Man to have organic web shooters, and Sam Raimi even states that it would be a stretch of like imagination to like actually have this Peter Parker because we never actually really showcased that this Peter is like an inventor or something. He's scientifically gifted, but he's definitely not like a master builder or anything like that. So, and I'm sure a lot of people will also like wonders like so this guy gets like spider powers is like able to climb on walls, able to have this like miraculous like sixth sense, able to like bend and flex around like any a human spider will, but he doesn't produce webs. So giving organic web shooters that at least like it kind of makes sense in some way that it's the guy that gets spider power, so he gets the ability to shoot webs. Although, no offense to Raimi's, like wondering if it would stretch the special disbelief for mechanical web shooters, which we won't get until Amazing Spider-Man. But how is it that the fight from that spider makes the organic webbing sacs be placed in his wrists, or for that matter, be activated by doing the Spider-Man whip uh, hand poses? How is there some genetic code that states that so if a human bipedal has this like gene, the webbings will be placed in the wrists and come from this very specific hand motion. I don't know. It just sounds stupid the way I describe it, but it's like really straight to the point. We don't need to really delve in. We don't need that much fluff and filler for this origin tale. It's especially considering the fact that over the years the web shearer has had like a different design. Like at first it was like one of those like so I had this like a cereal box toy that's a web shearer, and it's basically what the 60s did. It's basically like this like press pump that would just be easy enough that you don't even need to do like the finger pressures. You could just make a fist and the web would shoot out to the point that there would be like very advanced like okay, so it only would activate if like these two fingers are pressed at this pressure point, so it doesn't react when I make a fist or grab something.
I think it's a very specific pressure point
Yeah, so it's
because in everyone in their hands has like pressure points, and like if you touch a certain spot, your limits the reaction sometimes.
Yeah.
So I guess that applies to the web
Here's a
shooter.
fun experiment. Try to let someone else like touch the back of your knee when you're walking. You'll just like out of nowhere just like fumble down like without any defense. That's heard of Achilles heel. How about the Achilles back knee?
I noticed that it must be a practical effect in that shot when it's his POV when he's shooting the web for the first time in before he attaches to the crane and tries to swing.
Yeah, it does look pretty like so. The way they show the web, it's like it's very it's almost very see through. Almost, it's like this
Like
like
Gossamer, very diaphanous.
yeah, but it definitely still gives off that sensation that he's having this like thin, strainy web, but it's able to hold on to its entire weight.
If you remember in the opening when they're explaining the spider powers, they said that one spider makes a uh,
Web
a
that's like
web with
has the
tensile
tensile strength of like I think like a
steel
bridge,
cables.
yeah, a bridge cable. And so let's see. Another difference in comics is the fact that let's see, uh, well they're the wrestler is not Hogan, but it's Bonesaw in the movie.
Randy Savage plays him so well. Hey, freak show,
You're
you ain't
going
going
nowhere.
nowhere.
I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime.
That's a really good macho Randy Savage voice.
No, thank you.
Snap
And
into a Slim Jim. That was him.
let's see. Okay, another big difference not many people would think of is that they changed the Flatiron building, a real building in New York City, to become the Daily Bugle. When the Daily Bugle is usually like kind of like a flat building with like a huge billboard that says Daily Bugle.
It's funny as the
But
Flatiron building was the one that blew up and Godzilla 98 dodged those missiles.
yeah,
Of course, I would bring that up.
and it's there's not
Now,
that
the similar.
that. Oh, the big difference obviously is they obviously lifted the night that Gwen Stacy died with the whole bridge scenario and Goblin like making the toss of like Spider-Man's love interest, but instead of Gwen Stacy, it's Mary Jane, and thankfully she doesn't die in this.
I think it's a different bridge too. I think it was the Washington Bridge for Gwen, and it was the Queens Bridge for Mary Jane. I think.
Obviously, probably like Goblin rubbing it in on Peter's face that he knows he's from Queens, so he would obviously use the bridge from Queens to make this threat
Mhm.
on.
But yeah. Um. Okay. So similarities though, there are a shit ton of similarities. We already brought up a few as we were talking about it earlier. But yeah.
The way that Rosemary Harris and Cliff Robertson is able to portray the Ant-Man Uncle Ben, it's literally lifted off in the comics that they
J.K.
think of
Simmons, that's it from
that.
the comics.
Yeah, uh, like shot for shot, Kirsten Dunst looks exactly like Mary Jane does in the comics, especially her debut where she finally reveals her face. Because there was that weird time in the comics that they were trying to like hide Mary Jane ways, like because they were making a joke of like, oh, this girl is the one my aunt is trying to get me with, and you always don't really look forward to a girl you think your aunt is describing like, oh, she's very nice, she's very sweet, she's got a great personality, and like boys in that day and age are like, oh, great personality, yeah, I'm sure she's a real catch.
And then of course, Face It Tiger hit the jackpot. And oh, this is some panels are lifted straight from comic panels, like the shot when Goblin like flies by with a lasso and catches a Spider-Man is from one of the covers, I think.
Let's see. Uh, uh, so obviously, going back to the differences, the big difference is that Peter never actually got to see his Ben, like it's his Uncle Ben, before he passed away. It's always like it's after the fact and Ben is already dead, and it's like he's off panel. Like it's the police that has to detail that. I'm sorry, son, your uncle Ben is shot, murdered.
Mm-hmm. Here's it. This is straight again. These two moments are straight, page for page translated. When the crook runs past Spider-Man, that's taken straight from Amazing Fantasy number 15, and also the facial reaction when Spider-Man catches the crook and sees like it's
Oh
that
yeah,
guy.
the
It's
deer in the headlights look. Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Oh,
that is like
that's just
iconic.
that's even reading the reprints of that issue. It's heartbreaking to see that. And like him like on his own like weeping that it's like, oh god, it's my fault. It's all my fault. Just it's heartbreaking.
And they recreated it well for that part when he's crying on the eagle of the Chrysler building, even though technically the building he's at is a different location than the way it was shown in the movie, but didn't matter. It was that you wanted the effect of Spider-Man sitting on one of those Chrysler Eagles.
Eh.
Also,
Well, I can't. I guess it's kind of like pointless to make the differences and similarities because obviously this is the first outing, and they really went out of the way to make sure that this is like how everyone knew what Spider-Man was, like from watching the '60s cartoon or the '80s or even the '90s, like one that was really garnering a lot of attention for people.
another panel for panel recreation was when the Green Goblin was killed, because even in the the 60s, I mean 70s, when after the Gwen Stacy thing and Goblin and Spider-Man fought, even he does eventually get impaled by his own glider.
And the fate of the Goblin from the '90s is also by glider as well. Technical difficulties always gets the best of us.
1 in 5 actually. But yeah, God, I keep making comments to that joke every time. Performance issues, not unheard of. 1 in 5 actually. But yeah, so we got that aspect down.
So let's actually discuss briefly like how big of a phenomenon this whole thing was building up to its release. Like,
Spider-Mania, people.
oh, I was there. I was there for Spider-Mania. That was probably like okay. So I had the only other time I had that experience with the phenomenon with Episode 1, Phantom Menace, when that was coming out, and I was there for the whole thing. But when like Spider-Mania was going on, I was like there. I had the uh, CD-ROM for the Spider-Man movie that included like a featurette, the original teaser trailer that was cut down and only showcased Spidey swinging, a snippet of the 2000 PlayStation game that replaced the Spider-Man model with the movie accurate one, and even having the teaser for the actual movie game that was coming out. Actually, that was supposed to be like the original like opening for the video game before they changed it out with something else.
Interesting.
Yeah, I still love it though. I still love the way it ends with the like showcasing the villains like the Vulture and Shocker and like these like bleak like monochromatic like montages, and it ends with the Goblin's pumpkin bomb exploding with in a fire rain, and then the close-up Spider-Man logo closing it off. That
Oh,
always gets me.
and speaking of the Spider-Man game, I always had a quote. So you must be Quilt Man, Pat it Pete?
Mr.
No,
Triple
no,
Ply?
no.
Oh, I got it! The cushion.
That always makes me laugh. And people say Toby can't quip. But yeah, you're right. Spider-Mania.
I remember playing the video game a lot whenever it was that demo kiosk, and I still need to get to play the Xbox version because they have an exclusive Craven Hunter level.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so there's that. I remember like there was the same time where they were pushing the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, and uh, the Walmart that was closest to me had like these like out of the way like single issues of part one and part two of Ultimate Spider-Man. In the weirdest place, like like they were planning to have them on shelves, but they just didn't know. Like they didn't have racks to sell comic books, which is weird because they used to for like magazines and such before they moved them to the back of the stores. But I don't know, just seeing those like comics there, like, that also helped fuel the hype for me, and the awesome action figures they did is I really miss when they push like those types of articulate action figures. Nowadays, it's like, oh, those are only adult collectors.
But yeah,
And
they even had figures.
uh, yeah, no, go ahead, gush about those figures.
If I remember, uh, that Toy Biz Spider-Man that was like super articulated, with, like the wrist swiveled, everything like that. I think that was the basis for the Spider-Man that It's a Random Guy used for his I'm a Marvel, I'm a DC thing, right?
Yeah,
Oh, God, I
uh,
love that
yeah.
that
I,
figure.
I'm pretty sure I still have those figures tucked away in like my superhero like mishmash tote somewhere in the roof.
But yeah, also, dude, uh, there was a ad campaign. Hell, I mean, he also had the friggin' Nickelback Ted Kroger song "Hero" like playing in all the music videos and ads for this movie. That I associate that song with this movie.
I'm sure everyone and their grandma does the same thing. It's like it's like
And
so
they
integral.
say that a hero can say, yeah, yeah, you can't help but get into it.
And the fact that like I guess it also helped that they also did shot some scenes in this movie in New York City, and I'm sure that the premiere for it, the movie, was like really big. You wouldn't see like something that big until like Peter Jackson's King Kong for 2005.
And of course, The Dark Knight in 2008. But yeah, the you're right. But dude, like Spider-Man was like in,
Everywhere,
and not only what,
everywhere.
because it wasn't just the 20th. I think it was the 20th for the was it the 20th or 30th for the comic character at that point?
40th actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So they were celebrating that. I mean, he was already a regular at the Macy's parade every year.
And at the time, he was also a big hot ticket ride attraction for Universal Studios Orlando for
So
Islands
yeah,
of
it was.
Adventure.
So yeah, of course. I remember there was a documentary special from E on the second disc for Spider-Man 1 that had them talking about how they were interviewing everybody and asking about Spider-Man and everything. They're interviewing all the cast members and what was their favorite Spider-Man comics growing up and stuff like that. And they would have in between things like, we asked the poll of what power would you rather have? Super strength, this, that, or walk
Yeah,
like
a lot of those polls were definitely leaning on the Spider-Man centric.
I
I
laughed
think.
at Spawn showing up low on the list. I'm like,
Well, what the
number
hell did you
five, what's Spawn?
expect?
It's Spawn. Spawn's a cool guy, but
Oh goodness, that CGI effect of hell. Oh my
anyway, but
god.
yeah,
We talked
not
about the
not just
build up and the. Oh no, keep going. Sorry. It's,
not just America though. This was world reaching, for crying out, global, man, global phenomena.
everyone was a big Spider-Man fan because, as Stanley once said, you could be white, Asian, black, Native American, Hispanic. You could be anyone and still imagine yourself in the costume. And that level of relatability with Peter Parker and the Spider-Man suit really helped uh, bring like so many people around the world to be excited for this.
I'll be honest. I bought a Spider-Man costume just for kicks, and I was able to see it on sale, and it really does feel cool wearing it. I don't know why. You just get a feeling with those colors and everything.
Yeah, I actually had a Spider-Man costume back then. It was like one of those with the eye holes and
And the
the
puffy
little.
muscles.
No, this was before they decided, hey, let's add fake muscles to it. This was like No,
Oh,
no, you're going all natural with whatever your body type is.
oh, so is it kind of like the spider suit that Justin Kyle wore for the Spider-Man AVG interview?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's exactly the same costume make that he wore.
I laugh my ass off every time I see that
Because
review.
it
I don't
was
know why.
also drooping with the mask if you didn't tuck it in with the top.
And the eye holes made it look like he was super pissed all the time.
Yeah. Although I wore that poor thing out so bad that you could actually see like stretch marks and like tears around the eyes and nose.
Oh, also, dude, what hero isn't popular until he has a damn ice cream pop named after him?
Oh my goodness.
With gumball eyes. With gumball eyes.
All these gumball ice cream treats, even Sonic was not infallible to it.
They even make fun of it in Into the Spider-Verse when Spider-Man's listing off all his
A
achievements and
so-so
stuff.
popsicle.
Yeah. So the reception, obviously,
Like
everybody really
even
loved this movie.
not just love, this thing broke records its opening weekend, like 100 million at the time. That was like unprecedented. And this is coming off from years after movies like Star Wars or Back to the Future or like even Superman or Batman. Like this thing shattered the record for blockbuster summer blockbuster releases, and like accounting for inflation, it's probably almost still to this day like a big winner.
According to the record here, it said that it was the first film to reach 100 million in a single weekend, as well as the most successful film based on a comic book at the time. With a box office gross of over 825 million worldwide, is the third highest grossing film of 2002, the highest grossing superhero film, and the sixth highest grossing film overall at the time of its release. Like shit, man.
It like it's it cannot be understated that this movie really cemented the Spider-Man was here to stay for
So,
the
dude,
big screen.
here are the other films of 2002 that the top grossing. So number 10, Tom Cruise's Minority Report. Okay. Number 9, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Okay, popular rom-com. Ice Age. M. Night Shyamalan Signs. Okay, you might groan at this, but Die Another Day was like the sixth highest grossing thing. Surprised it
Hmm.
didn't kill the franchise right there. But Men in Black 2. Now here's the thing. Spider-Man is number 3. Number 4 is Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and that thing came out in the same month, for crying out loud. So Spider-Man held back, managed to defend itself against a Star Wars movie. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And Harry Potter beat Spider-Man, and then the highest grossing movie of that year was Two Towers, which, well, no surprise, that is the Two Towers.
But
But
for a superhero movie, that's a huge leap. That one
damn,
definitely helped say that superhero movies are not dying. Because there was a point in history where superhero movies were just seen as like really quiche and like campy and just like not a real good investment to go on. Let's we discuss flops like Batman and Robin and Steel.
oh, not only that, but dude, you'll laugh at this. It also has the record for being one of the most best-selling live-action DVD titles of all time, with over 19.5 million copies sold.
Oh yeah. Well, to be fair, at that time, DVD was starting to finally catch on to be available to mainstream instead of like the rich and few, which it felt like at the time. Like I don't know. DVDs were kind of like a weird alien thing to me. It's like they had these displays and these discs. It's like how do they play movies on what look like game discs? This looks like a PlayStation. How does it play movies like this?
Dude, this is impressive. The film dropped to the second position in its third weekend, behind Star Wars Episode 2, only dropping 37%, averaging 12,558 per theater. Like, damn, dude, that. If you're a movie and your weekend drops are under 50, you're considered pretty. So the fact that this movie only dropped 37 when a Star Wars movie came out, just damn, we cannot understate how big a deal this was back then.
And you could definitely argue to some extent that X-Men helped save the superhero movie death, but no, it only just said like, okay, they won't all be like bad. They actually have like a good understanding of the hype and the the phenomenon. But it was Spider-Man that really cemented the people go to these superhero movies to have a great fun time, and Sam Raimi helped deliver with the way he filmed this movie, and the cast managed to pull together to get their characters to be these timeless icons that generations of kids will grow up on.
Oh, not to mention some iconic things from this ended up becoming like part of the regular pop culture lexicon of Spider-Man, like the upside down kiss. That came from this movie. So yeah.
And at one point, the comics even took the popularity of the organic web shooters and tried to make a storyline with it. But this
A weird
Arachne
storyline.
God, yeah, that got weird.
Hell, I mean, he practically turns into a giant spider but dies and then breaks out of his own corpse as himself and has the web shooters.
Like I said,
Uh,
comics are weird.
we love bringing that up every time. But yeah, like, yeah, a couple of things just stuck from the movie that became part of like associated with Spider-Man and all that stuff. So it's like, oh, now,
I should actually
minor.
I should actually also point out that the planned MTV like Spider-Man CGI series, which was helmed by the guys that did Reboot and the Beast Wars Transformers, at one point was trying to emulate the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, but because of the outlandish, like huge smash hit that the movie was, they tried to like retweak it to be like, oh, this takes place after the first movie because they evoke certain lines and methods, and it's bless it for at least trying, at least that
Wasn't for
they're
lack of
good.
trying, like I said.
But it's for certain characters like the version of Mary Jane they use. It's like, okay, what happened to Kirsten Dunst and who replaced her?
But yeah, so
Although
speaking
I
of,
was, it is kind of like hard to swallow at the time the fact that Neil Patrick Harris was doing a much better Spider-Man than Tobey Maguire.
plays a really great analyst in the Matrix. Oh, speaking of which, side note, I think the MJ model for MJ in the in the Spider-Man Marvel Spider-Man game is freaking adorable.
Oh yeah, when she's like in the red dress and you have to save her from the admittedly like slow draining air air pump.
No, no, I'm talking about the PlayStation 4 game for Spider-Man.
Oh well, geez, you could have been more specific.
I did. I said Marvel Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man game.
I didn't hear Insomniacs.
Sorry. No, but speaking of the Spider-Man game, I love the codes where you get to shrink the enemies or shrink yourself or make the heads and feet comically large.
Yeah.
Have you ever played around with those codes?
I mostly just for unlocking levels and costumes and all that.
Of course, it's funny. You can actually play as the MJ skin from the Unity Fair. You're still Spider-Man, but you're pretty much model swapped with MJ. And it's funny. You could get MJ to kiss MJ if you because she has a different model on the bridge. So, you know, games are fun. Uh,
Yeah.
and I like that Willem Dafoe actually was reprising his role as Goblin and making some very fun,
Yeah,
quips.
it would be very noticeable if gamers are listening to this Green Goblin and he didn't sound like if he sounded like a Defoe sounded like. It definitely shows that Willem was definitely going to like go the distance with this character, even to like a video game. A board can't fire me. I built this company. How dare they?
Yeah. Or him saying stuff like, Spider-Man, it looks like I have a date, or getting rid of you will be an unexpected bonus.
You misguided fool! I offered you the world and you throw it away. Well,
There,
I'll delude you of your ideas soon enough.
there's no need for us to fight. It's just a lot of great one-liners from Gavi in that one.
Who are you?
Oh,
Let me guess. The Emerald Elf? Me? I'm just a concerned citizen helping to clean up this fair cesspool of a city.
I'm just trying to unmask the truth of this cesspool you call a shitty. Oh, wrong guy. Wrong green guy. But yeah, okay,
So,
so minor
uh,
flaws. I think this movie is aged a little bit in some aspects.
some CGI effects will kind of like stand out and have a little bit of a rubber band to them. Like certain moments where Spider-Man, uh, like being aggressively flying around, chasing the crook in uh, the old mobile that always appears in every Sam Raimi project ever.
It better be a multiverse of madness somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. And it'll get demolished and abused like any other.
Oh yeah, but this one for sure. During the Unity Fair attack, when the Goblin hops, just before he starts shooting the
Oh,
machine gun at Spider-Man.
it doesn't even look like it's formatted well. It looks like everyone's just freaking out of like someone elsewhere, but he's clearly like right there.
And the pre-rendered it looks more like a unfinished animatic rather than. I mean, it's rendered, but it looks so rough in that moment.
Especially since it's like in broad. This is like high broad daylight. They don't have like glossy orange or like night to kind of like like fake it well enough because
And he doesn't look that bad in other shots. Just that one particular him hopping on the glider shot that's like uncanny for some reason.
yeah. Let's
Now,
see. So
some of the hotter balloons are a little hokey looking.
yeah, I don't know. It kind of takes you out of the movie to know that they don't have the rights to like iconic balloons that would like propagate in New York City.
So they got like these made for balloons, but the effects rendering they kind of stick out from the the background plays.
Uh,
Okay,
uh,
so the fly CGI fly is kind of funny. I mean, it's not bad. I just laugh every time I see it.
in the spider sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, no,
Okay.
I can't think of that many else to point out. It is mostly just the this is like still early 2000s where like unless you had like a really really dedicated like computer system like Lucasfilm had, that the effects would just kind of look a little bit rubbery.
Oh, but now, are there any acting problems or things you would have done differently? I mean, I know it's hard to say that for a classic movie, and nostalgia makes us say no, it's fine as it is. But are there some things that you recognize were little bit off kilter?
Uh, I don't know. I guess some of the students, like I think especially Flash's buddy, just kind of like doesn't really have that much to stand out on. Just
Yeah, yeah. Oh, now this isn't a flaw, but I just want to point it out because I don't know where else to rant about this. But what the hell is up with that exoskeleton that Quest Aerospace was using? It looks like a giant cricket pinata.
oh yeah, I don't know what that. If like Tony Stark saw that, it's like, okay, so is this a scuba diving adventure or like deep space or what what's the purpose of this? A
I do
military
like how they.
application. Uh, oh, well, maybe if you're manning like a pizza delivery.
Well, I gotta say though, I do love how the guy looks legit horrified when he sees the goblin, and that's before the goblin even shoots him. Because he's like, "What is that?" He's all, "Oh my god!" And then he gets blown up. But yeah. So, but yeah, but the quest. exoskeleton always confused me whenever I saw it, because I always thought it looked a little stupid to me. This is definitely an aged shot, and as much as you love the moment, it's a little bit okay. It's the sudden disintegration bomb that the goblin has.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of people looked at it and go confused. Like, okay, well if he has bombs that do that, how come he doesn't use that on like freaking Spider-Man or something? And let's just be honest. I'm pretty sure Sam intended to have them be blown up with like the typical pumpkin bombs he has, but it would have been a little bit too much gratuitous to happen to like they were able to get away with that with the military guys, but that's because they were faraway shots and in bunkers and it's implied. But this is like really close, and Mary Jane and Harry Osborn are close by, and like it would kind of be like really really traumatic to see like shoot up body parts or blood splattered around these two characters.
Yeah,
And plus
it's not even.
we have to still remember this is a kids movie. It's just like Sam's like quick implication that like okay these guys are there and no they're not, they're dead.
Like it's the I guess the idea is that it shoots such high level of radiation, it immediately, just like flash fried the flesh off him, and then they just fell apart from the radiation. I guess that's probably the implication. I guess.
Which then also makes you question. It's like, okay, so Mary Jane and Harry Osborn were just far away enough that they didn't get the brunt of it either.
Yeah, I guess. But the CG on the skeleton shot, it's blink and you miss it, but it is such an obvious CG moment.
But it's definitely one that a lot of kids will never forget seeing. It's like they see it like,
I know I
oh my
didn't.
god, they're fucking dead.
Yeah, I know I did it when I first saw that scene. Yeah, now here's a couple of other flourishes. I love that Sam always sticks in a jump scare with Defoe at random points. Like one that will always, I know it's coming, but it'll always make me sting is when
That's
he's
that was
coming back. Yeah, exactly. How did you know?
because I still remember to this day the fact that I jumped out of my seat yelling like a baby after seeing that in the movie. It's like probably my first jump scare ever, and
It's his eyes are all rolled back and everything. No,
it just comes
actually,
out of nowhere.
I think now is a good time. I know we're wrapping this up, but now's a good time to probably bring up some of our favorite quotes, because this movie is insanely quotable.
Staying away from you. Oh, that's a nice outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
Yeah. So, with the exception of Dr. Strom, we think the whole line is ready for human testing. And Dr. Strom, we need to take the whole line back to formula.
Back to formula.
And then later, when he gets them back to formula, and then we
You
also
can't do
love
this to me. I started this company. You know how much I sacrificed?
You're out, Norman.
Am I?
Am I? Oh yeah. If we could get Eddie's been on him for a week. We can't get a glimpse of the guy. Eddie's been on him for weeks. Oh, what is he, shy? Get a picture of Julia Roberts in a thong. We can finally get a picture of this weirdo.
You don't trust anyone,
Oh
do you?
man.
I trust my barber.
What are you, a lawyer? How assuming get rich in this like a normal person? That's what made this country start. Oh god, there's so many lines that just Jameson alone. Oh yeah. I never said I'd get you a job. Meat. I get you a nice box of Christmas meat. Best I can do.
Misery, misery, misery. That's what you've chosen. I offer you friendship, and you spat in my face.
If you'd not been so selfish, your little girlfriend's death would have been quick and painless. But now that you really pissed me off, I'm gonna finish her nice and slow. Oh god.
MJ and I are gonna have a hell of a time.
Flash, it was an accident. Yeah, my fist breaking your face, that's the accident.
Harry, help him!
Or this one.
Which one?
I don't want to fight you, Flash.
I wouldn't fight me either.
God. For such a minor role, Flash has so many quotable moments.
It almost kind of makes me feel sad that he didn't get like a returning role later because like in the comics or even in some cartoons, Flash Thompson turns out to be a pretty decent guy. He's just like given the whole bravado thing, but when he's graduating, understands that like the real world is not like the high school. He has to like really like come about to be a better human being. In fact, even
He
ends
also
up
has
being like the one of the Venoms in the future, Agent Venom.
he's also a huge Spider-Man fanboy in early comics, where he like
Uh,
trashes Peter Parker, but he loves Spider-Man.
yeah, it's something I also kind of emulate at my darkneon stuff. Where um, I have the bully Garrett messing around with Derek, but he like sees this dark neon and it's like completely wowed and enamored with them, but also kind of helps to showcase the difference between him and like his corrupt cop father.
Also, that's like it's just like I think in one of the comics, Flash was in a Spider-Man costume and got like confused. A villain attacks him thinking he's Spider-Man.
And even
But
the
yeah,
Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon, like at one point was gonna have him do the Spidey costume until like early episode he lost a bet.
but yeah. So another funny quotable I really like is but yeah. Sorry I'm late. I had to beat an old lady with a stick to get these cranberries.
You do too much. College, job, helping me. You're not Superman.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Uh oh yeah.
Peter,
Uh
listen, you're changing. I know. I went through exactly the same thing as your age.
no
No,
no
not
no not
exactly.
exactly. Yeah, and don't fall on your ass. I'm already on my ass, May. When the senior plant lecturer gets laid off after 60, 48 years, what else would you call it? I
I'm on
am
my
on my
ass.
ass. Oh, but fun fact that lady signing in the wrestlers is Octavia Spencer in an uncredited role, and she would go on to be a very well-known actress. Hell, she was even in H2 Halloween 2.
Oh.
She was the nurse killed in the dream scenario.
Oh.
But yeah, also, oh yeah, I love this reaction. In short, costs are down, revenues are up, and our stock has never been higher. Oh, it's wonderful news. It's just where we decided to sell the company. That little
What?
what? Just that little what? Oh, and let's not forget that iconic Godspeed Spider-Man. His moment he knew he fucked up face.
Oh.
It's that little oh. It's a horrific death, but you can't help but laugh at that one brief little I messed up face. Him just going, oh, but oh my god, yeah. So
Uh.
legacy. This thing definitely left a legacy on superhero films to come for sure.
Yeah. So it would definitely be a forerunner for other comic properties to try to look to. But for the most part, I feel like they mostly stuck to the way that X-Men handled their adaptation for stuff like Daredevil and
Fantastic Four.
Punisher. But it's like they kind of didn't see like what Spider-Man was doing. It almost feels like they're looking at the whole like, oh, okay, so we just gotta have the color of the costume right, and everything will be hunky dory. It's like, no, you gotta get like that heart. You get make it seem like you care about the damn thing.
I, like to be fair, no other movie came close until its own sequels. The only movies that could compete with it were its own sequels, and yeah, he had competition from stuff like Batman Begins, but this was before the whole DC Marvel rivalry really took off. So yeah, there was no peer to Spider-Man really, other than the X-Men films and Spider-Man himself.
And
Obviously, Tobey
it
Maguire would become
uh,
like the face of this character for years.
yeah, and it would definitely also lead to a lot of decisions for how Sony would handle the reboot. They okay, we can't be like this, so we gotta make everything different so it stands out. So can't make appear that geekish. Can't use Mary Jane. We gotta use Gwen Stacy. Can't use too much of Osborn. We gotta keep him hidden away because, God forbid, we try to replace Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, So on top of that, let's see, we know this particular artist slash pirate on DA that has such affinity and respect for Spider-Man though, but to almost vitriolic levels when it comes to anyone else even being compared to Tobey Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh, she has an axe to grind with the MCU, that is for sure. If you want to see some dunking on it, ooh boy, wear a hazmat suit. We love you, Cage.
But
We're playing in jest.
well, she turned around a little bit to see that they brought Toby in for the whole multiverse thing with No Way Home. But
Yeah, I understand,
up
but
until
the point is,
up until then, she was like vitriol about it.
but the thing is that this guy, I know people like to say it's cool right now and say, yeah, these movies were always corny and hokey and bad, but for 20 on years, this was the way Spider-Man should be almost in people's mind. It's like Christopher Reeve did that.
This is basically like the cornerstone Bible of what to do for a Spider-Man movie. That you have to
And
really be relating to the characters. You have to make the villains like be like over the top, but also very humble and like understandable to a degree. Like yeah,
okay,
like yes, Willem Dafoe's Norman Osborn is like over the top bad guy, but he's just trying. He was just trying to do his best to like have like a decent lifestyle for him and his son.
yeah. Also, uh, uh, what's great is the lessons from this movie would be taken and put to the next level in the sequels, and you get people arguing about stuff that the sequels improving and stuff. And even when it comes to like, if Scream 2 was made after Spider-Man 1 and 2 came out, I'm pretty sure in his sequel suck debate, Timothy Olyphant would have thrown back Spider-Man 2. I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
Randy would have thought,
No, no question.
I'm sure Randy would have put a funny
And
smart
it's
ass
like
comment back to his
uh,
tweet.
uh, uh, blockbuster contender. I can respect that.
Yeah, because I love that scene when they're just naming off movies, and I like how they point out, yeah, the hard on for Cameron. Yeah, Mickey kind of did list off a lot of Cameron films. But yeah, okay, so it's definitely holds up well. It's one of my favorite
It's
Sam
hokey in
Raimi films, I
places,
think.
but it has heart. This film definitely has heart, and it just is timeless, and it's like a little time capsule of like early 2000s superhero comic book movies done right.
Plus, it's a reminder of when hero movies were fun. I mean, I'm not saying they're not fun now,
They're
but
still fun to a degree, but it didn't have to have like encyclopedia knowledge to go to the next project over and over again. Ugh.
yeah, but but oh man, I'm not saying they're not fun now. I'm saying like there was a period where people were afraid of having fun with movies. Definitely in the mid 2000s. Spider-Man was the only one that kept that up going. If you think about it,
And Star Wars,
I'm talking about the just the hero genre. But yeah, like
right? But
when we had, but yeah, but Spider-Man, like even Spider-Man himself went through that with the Amazing films.
although
But
you can argue that they still try to have like a little bit more of a modern take to understand like the real world is a little bit hard to swallow and struggle through, but like even then,
they
even
get
Spider-Man will still turn out to be like a hopeful being, especially towards
and,
the kids in that those movies.
and jokey too. Like the car thief. You know, if you're gonna steal cars, just don't dress like a car thief, man. Like that's the quippy Spider-Man. Oh, that was so yeah. Uh, okay, so I think we said all we could say about this first movie, and this is only the begin. As as Goblin told Osborn, it's only the beginning. There's still much more to talk about.
Oh yes, so come back to with us next time as we continue the retrospective with possibly still to this day one of the greatest superhero sequel films ever made, Spider-Man 2.
Oh God, I am so looking forward to that one. But this one was fun. It's fun revisiting this one, and this is only the kickstart. I mean, it's we all love this character, so it really did turn our world upside down, like that preview promised.
So
All right.
this is Jersey Cat 79 over here signing off, and Dark Neon as well. And until next time, true believers, Excelsior!
All right, catch you at the next one.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward to him. Life is a great big bang up. Wherever there's a hang up, you'll find the Spider-Man.